We're recording and live.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. We will officially start the meeting in just a minute. We're going to allow a minute or so for attendees and panelists to all get on board and settled in, audio, everything working and functioning, and then we'll officially call the meeting to order. And I see there are a number of attendees, so that's good. Oh. Okay. Okay, and we've got so I didn't see Mr. Sautel yet as an attendee either, right, Caitlin?
That's right. I don't see him yet.
Okay. Well, we do have a quorum. Let's see. We've got 5. Oh, there he is. Good. Oh, great. We got Chris and Ed. Excellent. Okay. So I will officially and legally call the meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission to order for the 9th of November, 2023. Please note that this meeting, like all these Zoom meetings, is being recorded. So we'll start off as usual with a roll call in alphabetical order. Mr. Andrew Bernhardt.
I'm here.
Good. Biff Baus.
I'm here.
Great. Christopher Fay. Are you with us, Chris? Where are you? Oh, you bounced. All right. Let me, Chris, I just saw you pop back in. Are you here with us?
I'm back.
There you go.
Okay,
Joe. Yep. Okay, Joe Morgan.
Here.
Okay, great. Chris Sautel. How's your audio going? Okay, Chris. Oh, I don't see any audio for you. All right, we'll come back to you. But and Alan Markey.
Here.
Markey. Sorry, and Ed Neumer.
Here.
Okay, absent is Mark Syndrome. And hopefully we'll get Chris's audio going shortly. Okay, I'm going to try to nip along smartly tonight because we do have a pretty big agenda. When we get to a public comment period, if we do, and we might, I will go through the rigmarole for that at that time. But for the sake of time, I'm going to move right in. We have 2 demolition delay applications, so we'll get to those first. These are public hearings. The first one is 66 Prospect Street. I believe it's Patrick Hilfrich or for Hilfrich. Just please don't hesitate to correct my pronunciation. I like to get people's names correctly if I can. So yep, you are now, your audio is permitted. So this is a case where we have a just to introduce this, you want to do a 2-story addition at the rear, overframing a roof, and demolition of an existing single-story rear portion of the house. So that the roof change is what triggered the hearing, I believe. And I will tell the commission here and anyone else that it's listed on the district data sheets as approximately 1925. And something I don't usually see, it's called astylistic, which I don't know if it was my house, I'd consider that a little bit insulting, but anyway, and minor contributing structure. So, Mr. Are you with us, Mr. Helfrich?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Okay, and just so you know what the deal is here, because I haven't seen you in any of these meetings before. What we need to do is the first part of this is to determine if the structure is historically significant or not. If we decide it is not, then your time with us is pretty much over. You can continue with what other city permits and so forth you need. If it is historically significant, we also decide if it's to be considered for preservation or not. If it is considered for preservation, that means we think it's significant and should be at least considered for preservation. That's when we do a review of your demo and rebuild plans. So until we get to that point, we don't necessarily need to do all that. So the first part of the hearing is just to determine the historic significance of the structure. So is that pretty clear?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, why don't I turn the floor over to you and you can tell us why you think it either is or isn't historically significant.
Well, I think the house, as it used to be, was definitely an original structure, but I don't know when a lot of these renovations have taken place, but there's aluminum siding kind of everywhere, and it isn't in great condition. And the existing structures that remain there's a significant amount of rot. Before I was able to secure a mortgage, I had to remove a lot of mold from the interior, and mitigate that issue. But that's kind of, and so you guys understand, I am a first-time homeowner. I've never really taken on a project like this. I do have some experience in construction, but never have I been in one of these meetings before, especially leading one. So I appreciate you guys taking the time and hearing me out for this.
Sure, not a problem. Nick, can I call you Patrick? Where
Patrick is great. Thank you.
Okay, I tend to be slightly informal. All right, go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. So I am a new homeowner here. As I said, me and my wife Jillian love Newburyport. We've been visiting and have dreamed of owning a home there. Back in July, we were able to get an offer accepted, and as I mentioned, we worked through some mold issues on this home. We're expecting our first child in January, and we're hoping to get in there before then or around that time. The house has not been occupied for quite a while, and it's definitely has had some issues over that time, just from sitting. So we are, as you mentioned, writing to the commission to request a partial roofline change at the back of the house.
Yep.
We have spoken to a few of our neighbors, and the ones that we have spoken to seemed very positive to what we were proposing. We went over the plans with a few of them. Our intent is to leave the original structure intact, and we're going to build a small addition off the back, 8 foot by 21 foot. And we really want to keep it in line with the surrounding neighborhood. Like I said, we love the look and feel of Newburyport. We're not trying to, make a modern looking home here. We really just need the interior space for, the little one running around and hopefully a couple more in the future. The addition shouldn't be visible from the
Be
street.
careful what you wish for. Sorry.
No problem. It's going to be set in 2 feet from either side in the back, and the roof line will actually be lower than the existing roof line.
Right.
So it really should not be visible except for maybe, a neighbor behind us looking out their porch or something. There is a shed in the backyard that's also pretty run down. We'd like to remove this shed, and then that lot coverage area that shed took up will actually make it so we don't increase our lot coverage at all. So it should be the same lot coverage. And what else do I got here? So we'd also like to remove the aluminum siding. The original siding under it is that we can see is in really bad shape. But we do want to replace it with hardy board that looks period style. And that we would like to do on the front and the back. And then on the sides, we like to kind of match our neighbor's house, which he has cedar shakes on the side of his house. And we really think it looks great in the neighborhood. But yeah, I mean, we're just trying to match the history of Newburyport, and we're excited. We're excited to be here.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. I would point out that the Historical Commission has nothing to do with lot coverage and all that. So I appreciate the information, but that's a question for the building commissioner and the ZBA and so forth to review all that. So, but thanks for the information. Yes, Caitlin is now showing the. I'm not sure if this is your presentation, Patrick, or ours, but she's showing the district data sheet there that I was mentioning, the astylistic, which I interpret as meaning it doesn't have strong characteristics of any particular period or anything, which to me translates into, it's a utilitarian structure with some of the, vernacular stylistic things of that 20s era, nothing really remarkable to make it stand out in any particular way. The MC stands for minor contributing, so it's sort of contributes in that it is an older structure, pre-World War II, but kind of minor in the sense that it doesn't have any particularly strong architectural features. So any comment? Let me turn it over to our panel here. Anyone have either a comment, an opinion, or even a motion on this one? Biff, I see your hand up.
Yeah, sure. I can just want to make note too that although it is listed as minor contribution, I mean these statuses were put in probably around 1981, 1980. So obviously, we add 47 years to that.
Right.
I'm not sure if the status would necessarily be the same 40 years later. But I think it is, if anything else, that just adds to the age, which more of the historical value of it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. And Patrick, these photos here, these are pretty current. It looked like the other one may have been from like a Google Street View or something. Are these pretty much these ones we're looking at right now on the Zoom? Are they up to date?
Yes, these ones that we're looking at here now are from about 2 weeks ago. I did grab a few shots from Google Maps for some pictures I did not have that were requested or suggested. But you can actually see the dumpster in Google Maps now, so they are relatively
Yes, I noticed.
recent.
Yeah. All right. And I think there was a for sale sign too. All right. Any other comments? And thanks, Biff, for pointing that out. Any other comments? Looks like there's been some, I would guess that first floor window is not original to the house, but be that as it may.
I'd be surprised if any of these windows were original, but it's hard to tell. They're in very rough shape and quite rotted.
Yeah. Well, the second floor ones, so 6/6 looks like on the second floor, especially if they had storms, they may have survived this long, but yeah, they're probably in pretty tough shape, especially if the house was unoccupied for a while.
There's also some vinyl mixed in there as well, so it could be a mixed bag for sure.
Okay. All right. Would anyone care to make a motion? There are two possible motions. One is a motion that the structure is historically significant. A no meaning, obviously a no meaning it not, and a yes being yes. Or there's one could make a motion that is historically significant and considered for preservation. Or there's actually a third possibility. It's historically significant, but not considered for preservation. That would mean that we can skip the demo plan review and Mr. Helfrich can continue with his plans. Does anyone have the motivation to make one of those motions?
Glenn, this is Chris
Yes.
Fay.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that it is historically significant, but not considered for preservation.
Okay.
Your third choice.
Okay. Let me make a note of that.
That's my motion.
Okay. Is there a second for that?
I will second it. Andrew.
That sounded like Andrew. Okay. All right. So the motion is historically significant, but not considered for preservation. So what this means is that we do consider it historically significant for various reasons. I know some of our members are very, have a pretty broad view of what's historically significant, which is fine. But we have no objection to what the owner is planning to do here. So a yes vote means that yes, it's historically significant, but they can proceed. A no vote would mean it's not historically significant, I guess. Gets a little complicated for this darn the way this ordinance is, always screws me up. Anyway, let's see how we come out on a vote on this. Mr. Bernhardt, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Biff Bouse?
Yes.
Okay, Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I'll vote yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Chris Sawtelle?
Yes.
Okay, and Alan Markey?
Yes.
Okay, Ed Neumer?
Yes.
Actually, hang on a second. I'll take that vote, but let me just check something. We have 1, 2, 3.
That's two alternatives, 2 alternates that just voted, so.
5, 6. Yeah. But we should have just one because we only have one absentee. Well, you both voted the same, so we can make a note of that. But for the rest of the meeting, we'll have to decide which one of you will be the acting and voting member for tonight, and which one will be contributing to the discussion, but not necessarily voting. Would either of you like to volunteer to be the non-voting alternate?
I'll do that.
Which one was
Alan,
that?
this is Alan.
Alan Markey.
And then we
Okay.
can just, we can alternate, after
Sure.
that, Glenn. So I'll be the alternate voting this
Okay,
week, this
so,
time.
all right, so Alan and Gretchen, I'm going to put Alan Markey down as abstaining then as non-voting alternate. Okay, so there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yes votes anyway. So that motion is carried. So what that means, Patrick, is that while the structure is historically significant in at least some ways, and you may proceed to your other hurdles that I'm sure you'll have to deal with as far as talking either getting permits from the building commissioner, variances, or whatever you need from the ZBA and so on. But you're good to go from the historical commission.
Well, thank you very much, Glenn. I appreciate it. And thank you to the rest of the commission. We hope to be in there soon.
Okay, well, good luck to you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with the baby.
I appreciate it. We're very excited.
Okay. All righty. Next up, 443 Merrimack Street. I believe this is one where Mead, Telemann and Costa is representing the owner. Who's speaking for the attorneys? Is it Ben Lagar?
I think I'm the next one.
Okay. Lisa Mead, perhaps?
Right.
Oh, okay, so we have attorney Lisa Mead on behalf of the applicant, and Eileen Graff, the architect, is also online. I'm sure she'll chime in a little bit. So just introduce this one. It's in a way, it's kind of similar. We remove an existing single-story rear portion and construct a two-story addition. So I'm sure Ms. Mead is very familiar with these proceedings, so I don't need to review that again. I would note that there is no Form B. It's not listed on the district data sheets, probably, well, who knows why, but I know that they only went so far out Merrimack Street at the time. But Attorney Mead, I'll give the floor over to you to discuss the historical significance or lack thereof.
Thank you very much, Chair and members of the Commission. Lisa Mead, Telemann Costa, 30 Green Street in Newburyport. With me this evening is Eileen Graff, the architect on the project, as well as Seamus Cork, who is the manager of Q&G Development LLC, who are the owners of the property. As the Chair indicated, we're here for a demolition delay review. And as he also indicated, there is no Form B on this structure. If you can go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. There is no Form B on this structure. According to the assessor's records, the structure was constructed around 1850. For the newer members, that is that's kind of the safe date that the assessors use when they don't know exactly when something is constructed. So there are many houses in the assessor's records that list 1850. So you have to do a little deeper dive. And here we did determine that the structure was likely constructed between 1840 and 1878 because it's difficult to tell from the records at the Registry of Deeds. So we're in the same time frame. We do have an attached 1924 assessor's map, which is the earliest map that this appears for the city. And that's mostly because the Sanborn maps didn't extend out this far west on Merrimack Street. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So here is the 1924 assessor's map, and you can see this house in the circle. I don't know, you can blow it up a little bit. And this is at the bottom of Plummer and Merrimack, and you can see the house on the corner. If you go to the next slide, please. So here is the view from Merrimack Street as you're traveling west on Merrimack. And you can see there's a later added addition that's sticking out from the back there. And it is a little further back view across the street on Merrimack. Next slide, please. And here's directly across the street on Merrimack. Next slide.
How recent were these photos, Attorney Mead?
These were all taken within the last month or so.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. And here's a view looking, almost looking up Plummer. So you can see the other addition on the back of the structure. Next slide, please. And this is looking up Plummer, corner of Merrimack and Plummer. Next slide. And this is the view from Plummer. You can see the two different additions on the back. Next slide. And in a minute, you're going to be able to see how the second on the right-hand addition actually covers up halfway one of the second-story windows. Next slide, please. There you go. So you can see what they did with that window, with that addition on the back. And
Pardon the interruption, Attorney Mead. I should have been paying a little more attention on the Sanborn map. Are these rear additions indicated on there, or
only
could you
one
tell?
of them, only
One
one
of
of them, the one on the, I believe the one on the right-hand side,
Okay, thanks.
which is why, well, we're here for two reasons, but one of them is the older edition, yes, on the right-hand side.
Okay.
Next slide, please. And this is just a little further view from the back of the property. And next slide, please. And this is back toward the back corner, closer to Plummer. And I think that's it. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think you need to take your first vote here.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Well, panelists, what do you think? Anyone care to offer an opinion as to historical significance on this particular structure? You're awfully quiet. Chris, I see you're the only one that's unmuted. Christopher Fay, do you want to have anything to say, or just didn't happen to be muted?
No, I just can't figure out how to mute myself on my phone,
Okay.
so
How
I'm just
about-
hanging in there. But
Okay.
I can make a motion if somebody wants. I'll make a motion that this house is historically significant.
Okay, so is there a second for that?
I'll
I
second
could
that.
second.
I
Andrew,
think I heard Biff and Andrew. Is that right?
yes,
Yeah.
either one.
Okay. All right. So what this means, this is slightly different than the vote we took in the one before. We were just determining that it's historically significant, and then we'll have another vote following it. Well, assuming if this motion passes, that means it's historically significant, and we will then need to determine if it's considered for preservation. If it is voted down as not being historically significant, then we will then that's the end of the story. So a no vote means it's not historically significant. A yes vote, it is. So Andrew, your vote on this?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was a yes. Okay, Biff Bowles.
Yes.
Okay, Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you. Chris Sartell.
Yes.
Thank you. And now, Alan, you're still are you the non-voting one for this duration here?
I am.
Okay, so we'll put that as abstention. And so Ed Neumer, your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, looks like we're unanimous in that then. The chairs will go along with the crowd there. So we have deemed the structure to be historically significant. So now before we can go any further, we need to determine if it's considered for preservation or not. And just to be clear, if it is considered for preservation, we would have the public hearing with the demolition plan review. If it's not considered for preservation, then the owner can go forward with their plans. It's a little unclear to me if there's any restriction that they can only go with what their current plan and application is. But that's a whole nother issue I don't want to get into right now. Okay, so is there a motion that the structure is considered for preservation?
I'll make the motion that the structure is considered for preservation.
Okay, that sounded like Mr. Bowles, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay, great. Is there a second for that?
I second Chris Sawtell.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I'm glad you got your audio going. Okay, Mr. Bernhardt.
Yes.
You, okay, you agree
Yes.
it's historically significant. Okay. Mr. Baus.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Fay.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Sartell.
Yes.
Mr. Neumer.
Yes.
Okay. Oops. Okay. Okay, so the chair will put in a yes. Well, according to Robert's rules, I don't even technically even need to vote, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, so it's considered for preservation. Attorney Mead, I'm sure you know what that means. Well, we will have a demolition plan review, and it looks like you're fully prepared for that. So why don't I turn it back over to you to go over your demolition and rebuild, proposed plans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. So as I indicated briefly earlier, the proposal is to remove both of the rear additions. The one on the, as you're looking at the back, the one on the left is not historic, but the one on the right is the one that appears on the 1924 plans. So we're proposing to remove both of those and then put an L on the back that overlaps the existing roof. We did engage with a professional engineer, structural engineer, to review the condition of the older addition. I provided that review to you from Lisa O'Donnell. Just to briefly say, the older addition is in very poor condition. The most troubling aspect, according to her, is the proximity of the wood reamed walls to the ground and the underlying support. The underlying support is basically stone set in ground, and some portion of the concrete, where there is some concrete, is cracked and uneven. And also, upon further review, she determined that, in fact, much of the addition sits directly upon top of the earth. And some of it is concrete, but it may be patched, according to her. This is leading, of course, to the decay of the structure, as well as water infiltration along with the ground contact. So she thinks that there's significant concern about holding, not only putting an addition on top of it, but carrying regular snow loads. And or if you were to attempt to fix it, you would essentially have to remove everything that's there anyway in order to replace it. So
presumably your addition would have a new foundation of some sort.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. With that, I'm going to go to the next slide, please. So here we are. This is the back. The right side of this is the one that's more than 75 years old. And the next slide, we provided these two in our submission to the board. Next slide. And here's the interior of these additions in the back. Next slide. This is looking from the house to both of the doors in the back. Next slide, please. Again, looking through into the back part of the kitchen. Next slide.
Pardon the interruption, Attorney Mead. That first one, I think it was maybe around 17 or so, that where you could see try 17, Caitlin. I think that was. We can see clapboards on the right side there. Is this the one that's closer to the left, looking from the back of the house?
Yeah, that's on the left. And Eileen, you should
Right.
hop in here if I'm mistaken, because you've actually been in there. But there's actually another photograph that you can actually see the clapboards better, where they just
Yeah.
attach the
Well, it's
additional.
all right. My point was that clearly that was not original.
Correct. Right.
Oh, there
That's-
you go.
There it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Pardon the interruption. Go, please proceed.
No, that's quite all right. So if you go on down to 22, I think, there you go. So here's the floorboards that are cut up. And you can see what's the joists that are underneath. Next slide. And there you have the exposed earth right underneath the joists. Next slide, please. Same way here. I think it is evident what's happening here. Next slide. And there's another photo of the floor cut up to see the problems that exist. Next slide.
Yeah. Can anyone identify that grayish is that earth that's kind of that color, or what is that we're looking at in the,
I
you
can
know,
chime
below?
in on that, Mr.
Sure.
Chair. It's like a vinyl tile
Hmm.
that you're seeing there. Likewise, some found in the kitchen area. So it appears to be covering some form of a slab. What's not clear is how much slab is underneath there, nor if it has a proper footing /
Right.
foundation. So
Okay.
there's a lot of unknowns to this, very, very close to the sort of grade or earth,
Right.
that makes it difficult to feel confident about its stability.
Okay. Thank you.
Next slide, please. And then here's the outside of the corner of that addition. And you can see the wood clapboards in direct contact with the ground below. Next slide, please. And here's another way. You can see how it's actually leaning and popping out to the rear in this photo. Next slide, please. Again, the poured concrete around the bottom to kind of seal up whatever's happening down there. Next slide, please. And this is a chimney that we'd like to rebuild, which obviously needs some help. And so now, next slide, please. So as you can see on this site plan, and if you could blow up the house. So you can see that where we're proposing to remove the existing conditions and how the addition then steps in from the main house, as opposed to kind of hanging out on the side on Merrimack Street. And in a minute, and I think that when Eileen goes through this, you're going to be able to see it, but our renderings are much more helpful. You'll see that there's the L that's added, but then the addition on the right-hand side, the portion of the addition on the right-hand side is a flat roof, which is lower than the existing structure as well as the addition. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eileen to go through the proposed renovation.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. So as you can see here, I've set it up sort of our standard with the existing elevations on the top row and then the proposed below. And what I want to point out is that if we look at the original structure, the top left drawing, we are proposing that the main form, the original structure has some very, very minor changes and is pretty much staying intact. There is some rot, as you noted from scrolling through the photographs, due to its proximity to the ground. So there would definitely be some repair to the boards that are lower and such. There's a little window well actually not shown in here on the front elevation, front left of that door. Also that just needs repair. But mostly to note as far as the change is what you see as far as that hip roof of the kitchen on the back left corner. So that's what you see in this elevation on the bottom left. It's a really simple form, a narrow gable. It's, one room wide, living room, dining room on the first floor, and then 2 bedrooms on the second floor. The left one having a very small bathroom squeezed in behind it. So it's a really compact plan. And what we're proposing is to sort of support this style and design of the simple gable by turning the corner with an L. So actually, if you don't mind, Caitlin, going to the next slide, it's probably easier seen there. Exactly. So if we were to look at that bottom left image, that is where you can best see our addition proposed on the back side. So where this property sits on the corner, it felt important to acknowledge how to transition as you travel around the corner. And it felt appropriate to put an L of a gable heading, say, uphill on Plummer. The width of it is no wider than the original structure. We overlay the roof on top of that to the left of that existing chimney. And that second floor piece, that addition, steps back from the existing corner, left corner, by 4'3". again, trying to expose the original structure even more to respect that original form. And yet on the lower level, we come around it with a one-story shed just to soften that scale and make it more relatable as far as the streetscape and the street experience. And then on the bottom right side, you could see it straight on from with your back to Plummer. Again, the left end would be what faces Merrimack, and then it travels. Something to note is there is some pitch on this site, which probably is what's contributing to all the sort of rot and damage, besides its sort of relationship to the grade. But that is definitely something that needs to be addressed as this work is done. If we look to the left drawing now, what I want to talk about is the piece to the right of the gable. What we've proposed there is a two-story addition. That plane with the two single windows on the second floor and the sliders below, that plane steps back about just shy of 7 feet from the most rear elevation of the addition to the left. So really sort of stepping back and giving that gable, new gable, some prominence. We've proposed a flat roof just to minimize the sort of impact and presence of the addition, and just tried to keep a low profile for that reason. And then if we go.
Sorry, I want to
yeah.
have a quick question. Caitlin, could you go back one slide, please? Yes, in the lower right, is this just a graphical error here? It looks like the roof, the ridge line of the roof of the addition is higher than the existing ridge line, but I'm wondering if that's just something weird with the particular.
Absolutely. It's a little bit of an optical play because that chimney is in there and sits in front of it, but it is no taller than that ridge that's there. So building
they're
height
exactly
remains
the
same.
Okay.
But you bring up a good point there, and that I want to note that there's a chimney on that elevation. The one you're seeing in relation to that, say, ridge line is the one that's in the middle of the house. And what we're proposing is removing the one that's furthest on the east end. It doesn't appear to be original. If you walk by the house, you can actually see it chasing by that 6 light awning there. And so we'd like to sort of bring that window back in its presence by removing that left chimney. But if I could just comment.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just saying, go ahead.
Okay. So as far as materials, we, as mentioned, will replace any rotted clapboards that exist currently. We'll replace the windows with, high quality, double hung, double glazed, 2/2 windows with a simulated divided light and a spacer bar. Majority are the 2/2s, occasional ones, as mentioned, in the gable ends. Those are little awnings. The roofing would be replaced. That back elevation, it's almost a little comical how much they're curling currently on the existing roof. So replaced with architectural roof shingles throughout. And then lastly, if I'll just touch on, there is a proposed separate structure. I didn't feel confident in trying to attach something here. I like the idea of keeping this structure free from any attached garage. So this is a smaller accessory structure, 22 by 23 in footprint. It is uphill on the Plummer side, as opposed to the current driveway is actually off of Merrimack to the left of the house. So we will remove that access point and bring it up on Plummer to just help it be more comfortable from getting in and out. So with that, maybe the next slide, and I could also touch on that rendering there to help describe that. So there you can see the proposed addition on the rear, that gable L coming off the back of the structure, and then the detached accessory garage behind it. It's located uphill. We tried to preserve, it's located in a position that actually is trying to preserve that tree that you see to the left of the driveway is a beautiful Japanese maple. And so we're trying to avoid colliding with that by keeping it uphill a little bit. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have, but I'll pass the presentation back to Lisa.
I thank you, Eileen. I think that what you've done is present here that the proposed addition obviously respects the existing structure, is subordinate to it and complements it, and that there is ample reason to remove that small addition in the rear. And so we would request the board lift the delay and allow the applicant to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mead. I have one real quick question for Ms. Graff, and that's looking at this rendering. Is the pitch of both roofs, in other words, you're matching the pitch of the original roof with the roof of the addition, a second story part?
That's correct. That 2-story L is the same
Okay.
pitch.
Okay, I'll tell you why I ask, because often we like to see, we appreciate that you've stepped in the addition, which is good, and often the roof line or the ridge line will be just a bit lower, but I can understand that in a way you've sort of made the other compromise where you kept the ridge height the same, but matched the pitch, so things would look more at home. Okay. Very good. That is my only question. Does anyone on the panel have a question they want to clarify with either Attorney Mead or the architect, Eileen Graff? Because if not, I'll wait. Okay, Joe, I see a hand.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted some clarification on the condition of the, the main house itself. We know that the lean-tos in the back are wholly inadequate. They should be demolished. But I think I read that the house has been unoccupied for a while. What's the condition of the interior structure and finishes? Is it going to have to be completely made over and renovated and maybe even potentially reframed in some areas?
Sure, I can answer to that. It actually has been occupied till about, I want to say about 5-6 months ago. The family that lived there actually has lived there for a while, raised 6 kids in there. And it's a 2-bedroom and currently. And so over the years, it hasn't gotten much attention at all. So it will be nice to give it a little bit of love, let's say. It's curious, if my back is to Merrimack Street, the right side basement, I just want to sort of note conditions. There is no basement. The only thing I could think of is a little bit of crawl space, is that they probably hit ledge when this structure was built, and that they didn't bother at that time blasting. The left side of the front, from the front, does have a little bit of basement. So there's really not much. And again, the 1-story piece is nothing. So there's really not much underneath there. As far as, there's certainly probably going to be some sill rot, and repair, again, because of its proximity to the grade, which is also something that we would like to, or we're proposing in this design, to continue with this sort of relationship with the grade, because that seems appropriate rather than having a step internally, which then would change the sort of balance of the windows from new to old. But we'll handle that in a construction detail where we can make a shelf and really push that first floor down so it can stay aligned with the existing.
And one other question, what do you mean when you say you're going to overframe the existing roof? What does overframing mean?
Oh, sure. So the L that you see right now, that gable coming off the back, we don't intend to, it's going to overlap on top of that existing. So when I say overframe, it just is literally just overlapping when I say overframe.
So there'll be no additional loads on the original roof. It would basically be a roof sort of cantilevered from the new structure over to the existing roof.
Absolutely. It's a good question. Likely we'll end up with a ridge there to help support that existing roof. It's not great in terms of today's standards of snow loads. So the structural engineer went through it all when she was there, and that was one comment she made. So likely a ridge beam going from gable end to gable end on the existing structure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so to follow up on Joe's question about the overbuilding, so I see there's a window in that what kind of attic space in the addition, Ms. Graff. So if someone went up there, would they, see the old shingles and they look toward the old house, or would it just be opened up, or what's the plan?
Currently, yes, you can go up there. It's not a lot of headroom. It's pretty low because of the nature of the narrow width of this building. There's not a lot of volume there. So yes.
I think Eileen, the question was in the new addition.
Right.
Oh.
If you're standing in that and you're looking back towards the existing structure, are you going to see the roof? Are you going to be able to just get up there? Like, is there going to be a little hole, or what's that going to be like on the end?
I didn't even likely. I think right there, the plane of the wall will just continue. Actually, I think at that location I have a closet, and you won't even see it. It'll be a flat section, but the area where you see the 3 windows, that would be a primary bedroom,
Right.
and that will likely get a vaulted space.
Thank you. Any other questions from the group? And if not, we will proceed to, okay, I see your hand, Chris, briefly there. Chris Sortel, you have a hand up. I want to, once we're through with our clarifying questions, we'll have a public comment period. Oh, your hand went down.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I just had just a couple questions concerning the chimney, I believe that's on the left side of the house that's going to be taken down. Does that chimney go with any fireboxes or something that are in the house now?
Yeah, that's a good question. It truly was just flues. There's no fireplaces, no detail on both of those. That chimney actually, I think in one of the photographs you could even see it. It goes through a closet on the first floor. It's boxed out, and it's just curious. Again, it doesn't, in my point of view, it doesn't support that it's as old as the one in the center.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question I had was, is the attic in the original house, is that finished, or is it just it's all unfinished?
No, not finished. There are inhabitants, but they're not humans.
Do they have fur?
Yes.
Okay. That's for me for questions. Thank you very much.
Yes, we're familiar with both rotted sills in old houses and furry inhabitants as a common occurrence in this town. Okay, so not seeing any other hands. This is a public hearing, so we will open a public comment period. So the drill is, if you're not familiar with it, you need to raise your hand so that we know you would like to make a comment. When you hear your name recognized, please unmute yourself on your end. We will take care of unmuting you on our end so we can hear you. And as with any public hearing, state your name and address and then make your comment. Please try to be mindful of the time. You use the Zoom control to raise and lower your hand, and do remember to lower your hand once you've spoken or been recognized. If you happen to be on a telephone, you can use *6 to raise and lower your. *6 to mute and unmute yourself. *9 to raise and lower your hand. So with that, we'll allow a minute or so, to see if there's anyone who is attending and would like to comment on this. And so we'll just give a few moments, and if no one makes themselves known, we will close the hearing. I'll have to come up with some little hold music or something for this. I see a hand raised. It looks like Rita Mahalik. I hope I'm not massacring your name. You're recognized, Rita, so just state your name and address and make your comment.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Rita Mahalik, 53 Warren Street. I am a board member of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. My comments tonight are on behalf of Tom Coulterjohn, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust, who could not attend tonight's meeting. The significant historical features worthy of preservation on the 22 Market Street Inn that are in danger are: 1, the windows. These are examples of historic early windows. They should be preserved and repaired. 2, the window trim molding only on the first floor is a replacement. Replicate the second floor window trim molding for the first floor. Keep the window trim and sills. 3, the exterior shutter replacements should be of good quality. Review the present ones. 4, the old.
Ms. Mahalik, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I hate to do that, but we're not on the 22 Market Street hearing yet. We're talking about 443 Merrimack Street at the moment.
I'm sorry.
That's quite all right.
I'm sorry. I wasn't familiar that you do more than one public comment. Okay.
Oh yeah. Well, they're for the particular case. The actually 22 Market Street is the very next item on our agenda. So if you can just hang in for a few minutes, you'll be able to make your comment without interruption.
I'm so sorry. I jumped the gun. Sorry.
Oh, okay, not a problem. Let's see. We'll see if anyone else has a public comment. Let's see. And I'm not seeing any. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period for this one. I don't think there are any public comments. So let me turn back to my fellow commissioners here. Let me make a note here or something. Okay, so so let's see, and let's go very quickly around the board here. I'll let everyone just express an opinion. If what you wanted to say has already been said, you can just say, just point that out for the sake of time. Just in no particular, Christopher Fay, any thoughts or comments?
No, I mean, this is going to sound weird, but I'm looking at in the presentation, slide 22, and I'm just fascinated. Like, this should be preserved as like the museum of early do-it-yourself projects. And I'd actually would like to, if Eileen Graff could say, is the checkerboard, is it a patio or is it linoleum?
I am speculating that it was once a patio, a covered area that got enclosed to create a kitchen.
Yeah, right.
And at some point somebody put that linoleum in and then framed, on and on when they put plumbing in. That's what
I couldn't tell if it was stone or solid, or if it was just like, linoleum tiles. But anyways, no, I don't see. I think the house needs to be taken care of, and so I'm good with the proposal.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher. And you asked a question that I'm sure was on many of our minds, like, what is going on under that hole? Okay, Alan Marquis, any thoughts from you?
Other than I think it's a great design, and I appreciate the fact they stepped it back from the road, from Plummer. I think it's just going to be an improvement. It looks pretty shabby and beat up at this point, and I totally agree that back addition is a little bit of a horror show. So good to see it. It's good to see it go.
Okay, and by the way, as a totally different matter, not really of historical interest, I think putting the driveway on Plummer Street is probably a good idea from a safety perspective too, given how Merrimack Street, the usage there. Okay, how about Joe Morgan? Any thoughts?
Oh, sorry, you caught me nodding off there. Sorry. I feel that the bar should be higher on this property just because it's a corner property and it has a lot of visibility. And if I thought that the original structure was really worth preserving, if it was really preferably preserved, then I think I would pursue that a little bit further about the way you're not really distinguishing the addition from the original building. And I mean, in sort of an academic way, you would want to do that to preserve and acknowledge the historical significance of the original structure. I mean, in this case, I'm not reading it really. I think Chris said it very well. You know, there's really, it needs some help, and I think what's happening here is it's really, you know, it's being extended and enhanced through additional an L and another outbuilding garage, and I assume that they're going to upgrade the entire structure. So I kind of agree with what Chris was saying. So I think though, again, just to mention that in another setting, it may not be such an easy call, because I mean it is a very highly prominent site, and it is a historical site.
Okay, and you know, you raise a question that I often ponder, which is, you know, and it gets a little tricky as far as distinguishing, you know, not making the addition so like the original that it's hard to tell that it's an addition. And I wonder, I know Ms. Graff is familiar with historical design and preservation and rehabilitation standards. Do you want to have any comment on that, Ms. Graff?
Sure. If I could just comment, I think I may have neglected to comment on the, most of the addition is actually going to be sided differently. It's going to be in a cedar, a pre-dip cedar shingles. And I think that while yes, the gable lines are similar, you know, the feeling was that you would get a different form or a clearer line, that the addition is a different siding. So that was the thought process there. There's some clapboards on that upper level, but majority of that addition is shingled.
Oh, I see. So the shingles on the, I'm looking at this, what we're looking at right now, on the right-hand side is shingled. The first floor level of the left side is shingled, and the upstairs second story up to the ridge is clapboards. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, it's a tricky one, and you know, you can see some of the detailing is a little different. It you know, on the one hand, you want it to blend in harmoniously, but you also want to differentiate it. So that can be kind of a balancing act. Okay, let's see. Anyone else? Ed Neumer, any thoughts from you?
No, I have nothing to
Okay.
add to what's been stated.
Okay. How about Mr. Bernhardt?
I'm in agreement with everyone else. So.
Okay, sounds, let's see, did I miss anyone? Chris Sautel, did I catch you? I can't remember.
Hi. Yeah, just a couple observations that I had after listening to the other commissioners. But I agree that the addition that's being put on the original house is different than the original. I mean, with the hip roof that comes up off the second floor, that goes up to the hip roof off the first floor going into the second, creates a shape that's not particularly close to the shape of the original box, which was one of the confusing parts of, obviously, in addition, you want it to fit and you want it to look good, but also it's not supposed to be a perfect replication of the rest of the house, which is a standard. And they also mentioned that if they ever had to take the new addition off to bring it back to the original house, and they did this, I imagine the original house would be in much better condition than it is right now.
Yeah.
After all the rot and everything, I mean, that rot, that'll do it. So I'm glad that this is actually being looked at.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you are an owner of an old house, so I'm sure you're familiar with that problem. I'll just make one quick comment about the plan that one of the things that I particularly like about it actually is for me, and this one shows it, if you look at the existing rear elevation and even the side elevation, the confusion of lines and the fact that that older addition juts out toward the side of the house, that, you know, you can see it sticking out at the back and the rear. It just, it is a very disharmonious kind of look. So even though, you know, we're not a design team here, but I think we can agree that the proposed plan is significantly cleaner. And yeah, I think we definitely all agree that the house needs a little love. Okay, so I think we're ready. Biff, I see your hand up. Did you want to make another comment? Oh,
Yeah, I didn't really have a chance to weigh in yet, so I just
I'm
wanted to-
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I agree with most of what's being said. I mean, I think the current additions to the home aren't really doing any justice to it, and obviously weren't done very well, and we're kind of patched all together. So I think there's obviously, I don't think there's any harm in removing those. I think the only issue I'm having is I'm not seeing as much differentiation with this wing, and you know, maybe with the shingles and stuff, it'd look a little bit different than the renderings do. But like, to me, I'm seeing like it's taking the same home and turning it sideways and sticking on the back almost. The massing of it almost, to me, seems a little overwhelming, and maybe it's because the roof line goes up to the top, and the home on its own is such a narrow vertical sort of looking structure that when you compare those two images on the right, I mean, I think that to me was shocking to see that. And then when I think about the fact that they're adding a second structure on that lot, it's a vastly different looking thing. You know, I appreciate that there's the breakup of the first and second floors. That definitely helps it from becoming kind of like a monolithic side across that part of the road. But I think that's my hesitation, is that the overall massing of it is competing pretty visually, I think, with it. And as we've talked, I mean, it's right on the corner. It's very easy to see what's going on back there. So I think that's the one part that's troubling me a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Biff. Yeah, these two-dimensional plans can be a little deceptive. Like the page we're looking at, the lower right, I agree, it looks like, whoa, what's going on with that roof and so on, and that big addition. Caitlin, could you go to slide 34 again? That's the rendering. And whereas in the real house, because of the combination of, you know, you're not looking from a point of view that's 20 feet up in the air, and it's a bit, you see what maybe you see what I'm getting at. It's not quite as bad as that two-dimensional drawing would imply, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. But then I think this picture also just shows that the streetscape is going to look vastly different from what it does now, with the small skinny house in the corner and the big open lot. You know, now there's this whole other structure, plus you have, you know, fairly large L coming out the back. I think that's what I'm reacting to, and it's
okay.
And just part of the standards. You know, we do need to look at, you know, is the sizing and massing appropriate to this addition?
Okay, thank you, Biff. Okay, anyone else need to weigh in? Because what we need to do is probably have 2 votes ahead of us. So what we need to decide is, we've seen the demo plan and proposal to what they want to do. We've already decided that it's to be considered for preservation. So we can, what we need is a motion that the structure is preferably preserved, which would impose a demo delay. If you don't think it needs to be preferably preserved, that would be a no vote. A yes vote would mean that it's preferably preserved. There's a demolition delay imposed, but we could then vote on these proposed plans to either allow or disallow them to continue, or continue with some changes, or whatever we end up deciding at that point. So would someone care to make such a motion that it's preferably preserved? Don't all speak at once now.
Andrew, it's preferably preserved.
Okay,
It's
thank
Andrew.
you. Yep, Andrew. Okay, is there a second for that?
Seconded.
Sounded like Joe Morgan. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so the motion on the floor, it's preferably preserved, meaning a yes vote means that we don't want to, it shouldn't be demolished, and we want to see it preserved. And after this vote, Joe, I'll get into, I did look into the discussion you and I had via email about the vote at this point. But let's get through this vote first. So a yes vote means it's perfectly preserved, demolition is imposed. A no vote means they can proceed without any review or approval or disapproval of their plan. Mr. Andrew Bernhardt, what's your
Yes.
vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Biff Baus.
Yes.
Okay, Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Thank you, Joe Morgan.
No.
Okay, Chris Sotel.
Yes.
Okay, Alan Markey or Markey. Oh, I'm sorry, you're
Ed.
still the non-voting guy tonight, right? Sorry, Ed Neumer.
Yes.
I'll have to remember that so that next time, Alan, you get to be the voting guy. Okay, so and I'll vote yes. So the motion passes with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yays. So the demolition delay is imposed. And at this point, I'll take just a moment to, Joe and I had a discussion about what, can't we just have if we're okay with the plan, can't we just say that it's not preferably preserved? I took another look at the ordinance, and the way I read it, and the way it's worded, it sounds like the way we've been doing it is the correct way to say there shouldn't be any demolition, and then take a vote on, oh, okay, the demolition they're planning to do is not going to result in harm to the historical values and so on, and we can then approve that. It's a little, it's another vote, but at least that's how I read or interpret the ordinances there. So we've seen what they would like to do. We've discussed it and deliberated on that. Would someone like to make a motion that the plans that have been presented are acceptable? Alternatively, you could make a motion that let me see. Well, okay, no, what we'll do is we'll take that motion first. If that motion fails, we can discuss if there's something that they need to change to make them acceptable. So is someone care to make a motion that the plans are acceptable as presented?
It's Andrew. I move that the plans are acceptable.
Thank you, Andrew. Your motion making apparatus is getting a workout tonight. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that, Chris Fay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fay. Who is this here in front of I'm sorry, Ed, I was distracted by, I just caught a glimpse of your video. It's chopped off right about at your mouth line. Looks like you're peeking over a fence or something. But anyway, sorry for the distraction. The motion on the floor is the plans are acceptable as presented. So a yes vote means they may proceed with other permits, etc. A no vote means no, and we should, well, then we'll have to discuss what, if anything, is necessary to make them acceptable. So, Mr. Bernhardt, what's your vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Baus.
No.
Okay. Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you. Chris Sotel.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Neumer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the chair assents to, let me just make a note here. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 affirmative votes, which passes, the motion passes. So that means that the project may proceed as far as the Historical Commission is concerned. Thank you for your time and attention. I know I've said it before, but I will just say for both Ms. Graff and Attorney Mead, the board really appreciates the way you present the existing and proposed. It makes it much easier for us to clearly see what is existing and what's changing. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome, and thank you all very much.
Okay. All right, now the next item it falls into the category of general business. There are 3 items, none of them particularly trivial. First one is 22 Market Street. It says request for minor modifications. Let me explain very briefly. Now you might remember we took a look at 22 Market Street a while back. I think it was spring of last year, and this was the Market Street Inn, I believe. It was 2 structures. They had that weird, not exactly a Venetian bridge of size between them. It was a rather nasty bridge between the 2 structures. They were going to doing fairly major changes, mostly to the rear and so forth. They were doing also a lot of restoration, trying to keep in mind the historical values, because it is quite an old structure. And one of the things that they agreed to do was restore rather than replace the windows. They came to the zoning. Now this was a because it was more than 25% demolition, they needed a permit from the ZBA. So they went to the ZBA, they got the special permit, but the ZBA, in light of our recommendation, the recommendation of this commission, included that they do restore and repair and restore the windows rather than replace them. They recently came back to the ZBA stating what's legally called a quote minor modification to the plan, at least in their view, and I guess in the view of, in terms of how it's legally described, it's not like a huge change of plan. It's a relatively small change. I commented at that ZBA meeting that, well, to me, taking all those windows and replacing them rather than restoring them, that's not really a minor modification in our view. So the ZBA was concerned about that, and they have asked us, the Historical Commission, to review this and give them an informal, or just give them our opinion. Do we think what they want to do is okay? Now, so that's my little introduction. Is there someone here speaking? I see Attorney Doug Deschaines. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay, and I just heard your voice, so you're unmuted. So are you representing the applicant here, Mr. Deschaines?
Yes, sir.
Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, Deschaine.
Okay, thank you. We have a long agenda tonight. So, but if you could briefly explain what it is you want to do and why, then we'll take it from there.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Good evening. My name is Doug Deschaine. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Finneran and Nicholson here in Newburyport, and I'm representing Down East Residential this evening. Ben Legary and Damon Amato from Down East Residential are here on the call with us as well. As you stated, Mr. Chairman, we were before the commission previously with respect to the development of the Market Street Inn, and as you again mentioned, my clients had agreed and proposed to restore and utilize the existing windows. And then again, because of your recommendation and quite frankly, because of my client's willingness to do so, that was ultimately made a requirement of the special permit. However, we have encountered a significant issue regarding the use of the restored windows in that they do not meet or will not meet emergency egress requirements, because in order to do so, windows must, the quote is, they shall be operational from inside without use of keys, tools, or special knowledge. However, because these windows, as I'm sure many of you know better than I, the way they operate is you lift them up. They do not stay up on their own, but rather you need to lift it up to a significant height. And then there's a locking mechanism that you have to know to flip over to hold the window from dropping down. And that mechanism is not in keeping with the required code, and certainly not in meeting with this requirement that they be operational without special knowledge. Many people are not aware of that operational mechanism. So we have, we have proposed a minor modification, and why it's a minor modification is that we file for a modification and planning staff will determine whether it's minor or major. And that is not really with respect to the the magnitude of the change, but rather it's whether the change, the hearing for the change requires to be a public hearing with notice to the abutters, or whether it can be a open public hearing. So that's where they get the minor and major designation. But in any event, we have met with the building inspector, the planning staff, and the zoning enforcement officer to discuss this situation and how we can, both satisfy the historical commission's requirements and the requirements with respect to the windows, but at the same time meet the code necessary to obtain occupancy permits for the building. And in essence, Mr. Chairman, there really are three available options to us, and they are as follows. First option would be to replace all of the windows with reproduction windows, and in which case all those windows would be certified as meeting emergency egress requirements, and that, quite frankly, is what we have suggested to do. And before I discuss the other two issues, I do want to point out to the commission that this is not a money related issue. My clients are not trying to save any costs in making this change. In fact, the reproduction windows, we're proposing a Green Mountain window. Their reproduction windows are actually 2 to 3 times the cost of restoring the original windows. So it's not a money issue at all. So the first one would be to replace, the first option for us to meet code is to replace all the windows. The second option, which would be to replace one window in each room with one of these reproduction windows that meet egress standards, and then restore all of the other windows. And while that might seem like a reasonable alternative, the hitch that goes along with that is because those other windows will still not meet the egress emergency access requirements, we would have to secure the windows so that they were permanently shut. So what we would have is one reproduction window, which will be identical to the windows we're restoring, and then the restored windows, and they would all be permanently closed. Quite honestly, the thought of having those windows permanently closed does not appeal to my clients. And moreover, they are very concerned with respect to the potential hazard that would create. As you can imagine, this is not a homeowner situation where a homeowner can make that decision and be assured that they know how to operate those windows. We are going to be a commercial business whereby people that come stay at the inn, and we are very concerned that we have a much higher fiduciary duty to our clients, and we face a much higher risk should something go wrong in this facility. Also, our insurance company is questioning whether if that scenario is created where these other windows that are identical in view from the one egress window are shut, they're not at least at this point willing to insure us. So that from my client's perspective as a commercial venture owning a high fiduciary duty to its clients. We just do not want to set up that situation where in an emergency situation, a child or even an adult would be confused about how to get out of there. They may go to one of the nailed windows or shut windows, and then, not be able to get out. And who knows if they'll have time or the wherewithal to, continue down the lottery to find out which is the window that opens. So that is not an acceptable option to us. The third option is what we would do is put in one reproduction window, so to be sure that we have an egress conforming window, and then technically we would have to reconstruct the other windows, not just a function of restoring them, but reconstructing them and put in some kind of operational fix that would allow these windows to now open with ease, so that we wouldn't be exceeding the required foot-pounds required, and they would have to stay open on their own, so that people could get out of them. The problem we've encountered in discussing this with two window restoration companies, and I'm sure Mr. Legary can provide us the specific names, but one of them is the window lady, as she holds herself out to be. And we've discussed with her, could these windows be reconstructed to meet egress and access requirements? And what we're hearing from, in fact, both of the window restorers that we spoke with, is that, yes, they can install spring balances that would make the windows, more operationally acceptable, but they did express concerns with just how well these would work, and mostly express concerns over the longevity. That their experience has been that these reconstructions to affect the operational ability of the windows are not great, and that they don't last forever. Moreover, when we asked them whether they would provide us whatever documentation or whatever qualifications we need to show that these windows do in fact meet the operational requirements to allow us to leave them screwed down, neither would commit to that. Neither would say that these windows meet egress requirements, and that they would guarantee that they would continue to do so, for a reasonable length of time, or the typical life of a window. So this raises serious concerns for us, that while putting in one reproduction window and then reconstructing these new windows may appear to get us over the hump, no one will guarantee that. No one will qualify these windows as meeting the egress requirements. And so again, it wouldn't, because we would be putting one of the restoration windows in, we meet building code, but there's a real question now of whether these windows that we're now going to leave available for opening would in fact provide legal correct egress for someone trying to get out. So we're really faced with a problem here that, in either event, we're going to have to at least do one restoration window. And then the two options would be to either screw them down, which, as I've explained, is unacceptable to not only my client, but the company in terms of risk, and the insurance company in terms of willingness to insure us. And the potential reconstruction provides us no better assurances that these things are going to meet the egress requirements, or that they will continue to do so with age. So what my clients would like to do and what we've proposed to the board, the zoning board, is to allow us to put these Green Mountain reproduction windows, which in my opinion are great windows. They're well built. They really, I mean, they look identical to the original windows, and yet they are fully certified as meeting all safety requirements. And as sort of mitigation to the proposal, my clients do recognize the fact that, we had committed to restoring the windows and preserving the historic benefit of those windows, but safety trumps all, gentlemen. And so what they are proposing, and have proposed to the zoning board as well as the commission, is that we would propose to, in order to mitigate sort of this historic loss, so to speak, we would propose to put a cedar shake roof on the building instead of the architectural shingles that were going to be used. And we believe and understand that this is more in keeping with how this structure looked and how it was constructed originally. So we do think that the cedar roof addition or proposed mitigation for this window change would really be offset by the cedar shake roof. And getting back to my earlier statement about costs, not only will the reproduction windows cost us 2 to 3 times what restoring the windows would have done, but the cost of the cedar shake roof is far more than the cost of the windows. So again, gentlemen, we're not proposing this as any kind of a cost saving measure, but rather, it really comes down to safety and insurability of the project. And so that's why we're here. We do appreciate when we did apply for the modification, there was a question of whether we would have to come to this board first, as we do, when we originally filed. But it was indicated to us that we would go straight to zoning, and that's what we did. So I certainly don't want the commission to feel that we in any way we're trying to avoid. And in fact, when the chairman jumped in on the zoning board meeting, I hope you'll agree that we certainly felt that we would come to the commission. There was no question in doing so, and we're happy to be here, and we do appreciate your time and your consideration. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if Mr. Legary, I do believe he may have a statement to make as well as the owner of the building, if that's acceptable to you. But I certainly know that he may be required to answer some of the questions you have, because he is far well versed and educated on this windows and the safety aspects, as he is an educated architect, does not have an architectural license, but his schooling is in architecture and development. So he's quite knowledgeable about the issue.
All right. Well, for the sake of time, Mr. Legary, did you have a comment that would not be particularly lengthy, that something you quickly want to save? I have a couple questions.
I wasn't going to dive into the code. I think you probably were at the zoning board meeting. I did do that. There's a lot more in depth in the code. We've pretty much just come to the realization, talking to the insurance company, that as it sits today, he's kind of putting it on. He needs somebody, lack of better words, liable. He's basically like, a new window comes with, if they certify that it operates, if in a fire and safety hazard it doesn't operate, those windows have insurance companies, those windows have certification companies, they have testing companies, and it's right on down the line, which the insurance companies like to rely on. And this is our biggest problem is, that last option that's been placed on us is, well, there is an option to make them fully functional. I fully inspected the windows. There is no jams. It is a window pane next to the framing members. There's not a lot of room. And I've tried. I mean, I've called both window ladies. No one, and actually, I'm getting the feeling like the window woman's company understands the risk and is I'm not positive she would even take the job. Her last comments to me, I mean, I took notes during our conversation. Her last comment to me, it was, this case seems like a no-brainer, that replacement would be the best option here. She made comments like, the mechanisms we have don't work amazing. Historic restoration is not 100% good idea for every person. And she said, we can make them work, but not 100% safe. So those are exact quotes from talking to her. So we really are struggling with, you know, we want to keep the historical character because this is a historic hotel. We are really making an effort to make this the top hotel, you know, a shining point in the Newburyport hotel scene. But it, like I said, it's a lot different than a homeowner's house where they can make the decision. And just to remind everybody, the reason why there's exemptions in the code, it actually is spelled out that it is set up as the code is supposed to require that they are not allowed, and there's an exemption where a homeowner may ask and apply and ask to be exempt from the code. This is a unique situation where there is no code of forcefully forcing somebody to take an unsafe living condition if they don't want to. And all of the codes are actually set up along with the Newburyport window guidelines, is that we really have to ask for permission because it's usually homeowners that understand the risk. They love their windows. They don't want to be forced to upgrade to meet codes, and they write a letter and ask for this exemption. So, you know, where we stand right now, because of the insurance problem, because of the health and safety risk, my guys don't feel, you have to have a registered design professional write the letter to the building inspector while you're presenting your permit. They don't feel comfortable. And then just last on the list is, you know, when we did choose the windows, we did follow the historic guidelines for replacement of materials in historic buildings through the existing buildings code. And they have certain requirements where it does say that features may be replaced and shall be permitted. But the replacement must match the original in configuration, height, size, and shall be, and it says materials. So basically we picked a wood window, same dimensions, same shape. They have the same grid patterns of the mullions are the same size. They really do match pretty identically, and we tried to follow the existing building codes on that, you know, replacement. And that is, and the mitigation is really our effort. We feel bad that this does turn out to be quite a safety code issue. But I do think from afar that the cedar shake roof is going to make a pretty drastic difference, considering most historic houses that are state run or, you know, museums or preservation, they all have cedar shake roofs. So we wanted to kind of bring it back. And from the outside, you're going to see from the layperson, they look identical. They're wood, they operate, and the cedar shake roof will be the one last thing that would bring it back to actually what it would have looked like. So we're hoping that hopefully that's appreciated and understood. And if there's any questions, I'm here to answer.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask a couple of quick questions, and then I'll see if there are any clarifying questions from the team here. I think one of them you may have just answered. The location and actual size of the window openings would not be changing. In other words, even if you're not just replacing the sash, but replacing the window unit, which is, I assume, is the case, they're either custom made or by sheer luck they happen to have a size that exactly matches what's there. So can you clarify that one first of all?
Yes, so they will match the existing openings. It's almost like retrofit, or I don't know, I'm blanking, but you know, retrofit windows where you basically, they take the size opening, they measure it, they slide them in. So they will be the same shape. It's actually, it's not even a guideline. I believe it's a mandate in historic homes as the procedure for replacement.
Now, I had, besides the comments that Commissioner Earls made at the ZBA meeting, I had some correspondence with him, and one of the things of note is that the emergency egress window, the requirement is for that to be in a sleeping room, but it sounds like you want to replace the windows everywhere. Why is that?
The whole building is, it's an inn, so almost every room in the building is a sleeping room. So we
Even the
would,
dining room, even the kitchen, I mean, every room.
well, we only have 2 living rooms, so it is pretty much, I mean, it's a motel filled with small, rooms. And we only have 2 living rooms, and they're actually in the center of the building. The rear has 2 small little kitchenette things, but one has an egress door to the rear, and the whole rear is new anyway. So he is correct, but the entire portion that we propose to keep these windows, every room on that portion is a bedroom.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And did I have one other one? All right, let me just stop there for a minute. There may be other things that come up. First, anyone on the Historical Commission like to clarify or ask a question to clarify that? And then it's not required, but I'm going to opt, since I know we have at least one person who would like to make a public comment, I will permit that after we ask any of our questions. Don't see any hands among my team here. All right, so I'll briefly open a public comment period. So I'll formally open that. So I know that earlier there was a person in attendance. I see her hand is still up. That's Rita Mahalik. Caitlin, can we activate her audio? Okay, Rita, you're unmuted now. If you would like to, this is a public comment, just state your name and address and make your comment. Please try to be brief.
Yes, again, thank you, Chair and the Commission for letting me speak tonight. My name is Rita Mahalik, and I'm a board member of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. My comments tonight are on behalf of Tom Coulter-John, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust, who could not attend tonight's meeting. The historical significant features worthy of preservation on the 22 Market Street Inn that are in danger are the windows. These are examples of historic early windows. They should be preserved and repaired. The window trim molding only on the first floor is a replacement. Replicate second floor window trim molding and put it on the first floor. Keep the window trim and sills. The exterior shutter replacements should be of good quality. Review the present ones. The old exterior shutters hardware should be preserved, restored, and used as possible. Now, the front door entrance represents beautiful Georgian and federal door design and hardware. It should be preserved and restored. It is largely original. However, the top board and top molding above the door is likely a replacement. This should be opened up to see if a window transcom is still in place. Preserve this transcom or replicate it from a period example. Without fail, preserve the pillow molding. The gambrel roof shape needs to be brought back so it is visible in the front. The clapboards for the front of the building should be replaced with real wood, not fake wood, not hardy plank or Borel. Also, match the exposure of the front-facing clapboards to not longer than a length of 3 1/4 inch exposure. Period features like doors, hardware, including the ones in the basement, should be salvaged or donated to preserve them. The bottom line is, at a bare minimum, restore the historic windows, preserve and restore the entrance door, and return the roof to its original gambrel shape. Finally, Trust co-presidents Tom Coulter-John and Linda Miller put a lot of work into working closely with the developer's first architect on this project. These and other historical features were discussed and agreed to preserve and restore. This is why the Trust supported the project initially at the Historic Commission and at the Zoning Board. But the first architect is no longer on the project, and what was agreed to is not being followed by the developer. At the very minimum, require preservation of the windows, front entrance, and gambrel-shaped roof. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mahalik. I also see a hand from Mr. Ken Swanton, who I happen to know is Vice Chair of the ZBA. So we'll take you off muting. Ken, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks, Glenn. Yes, I appreciate the ability to talk for a moment tonight. These folks came to our last meeting and we spent well over an hour in person with them going through their plans. They showed us the replacement window proposal. They had a sample there they brought in. And we went around and around, and mean, quite frankly, we don't have a lot of demolition control overlay proposals that get controversial like this. And we took very seriously the Historic Commission's detailed input when this came, a year or so ago to us. And so even though several of my colleagues were ready to go ahead with their proposal to change these windows out, I and some others felt that, it would be good to slow it down for a meeting and give them a chance to come to you and get your input and see if you have any thoughts on this. And this is back on our agenda for literally next week. So this is timely. And I'll be very curious what your input is. And thank you. And by the way, I spent the beginning of my evening tonight at the senior center trying to figure out what room you were in. But then I've discovered you still must think COVID is underway here. You're in Zoom mode.
Yeah.
But, anyway, thank you for letting me talk tonight.
Okay, you're quite welcome. And just on that last note, where we would like to go back to in-person meetings, we're basically waiting for technical improvements to the technology used there so that everyone could be clearly heard and fewer glitches and that sort of thing. But we do hope to go back to in-person meetings at some point.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Who's speaking?
Might I respond to Ms. Mihalik's comment?
Oh, can you? Yeah, I don't recognize the voice. Who's speaking? Is that
Attorney
Mr.
Doug
Duchesne?
Duchesne.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me yes, hang on, but Mr. Shane, just hang on just a minute. Let's make sure there's no other public comment. So Ken, your hand is still up, but you're finished, correct?
No, I'm good. Thank you for listening.
Sure, no problem. All right, I don't see any other hands. So we'll officially close the public comment period. And if you want to respond now, Mr. Duchesne, you can briefly do that. Just please try to be brief.
Sure. I will be very brief. I just want to make it clear to the commission as well as the commentator that we had agreed to all of the other things that she talked about with respect to the shutters and the front door, and we are going to open that up to see if there is in fact a transom window in there, or if there should be one. I think we agreed to put it back. And so, and again, the pillars, all of that, we had agreed to. The only point at issue today is this window question. And again, we're still going to do everything else we promised. Plus we are going to restore the window, the roof back to the shake. So I just wanted to assure her that we're not suggesting at all to change any of those other things. And perhaps Mr. Legary has the answer, but my understanding is that the restoration windows would in fact have sills that are reflective of what's there today. She suggested that we take the sills from reproduce the sills from this one floor to the other so they're all the same. The restoration windows will in fact achieve that for us, so that they will all have the same sill and it will be a reproduction of what's there today, at least the historic ones. So
yeah, they'll have, I mean, we're gonna read, we're in agreement with everything. I mean, we're not far along. I mean, I hate to say it, we only got our foundation permit in July. So we haven't gotten to framing or anything. So I hope that we're not violating things that we haven't even attempted yet. But it comes down for me. Listen, I went to school for architecture. I have a master's degree. I love historic buildings. I want to make this thing as historic. We have preparation of possible gas lanterns, all of that stuff. So we're not trying to make this a vinyl sided, any sort of spec house. This is something we're going to keep forever. It all comes down to, I do not see as much as everyone, she says, they must be preserved. Well, we have to also follow code. We can't be sitting in a middle ground where, I can't make that decision for my clients, and you, just like any hotel, we have to have sprinkler systems and fire systems, and the doors have completely different regulations. Everything in a commercial sleeping facility is heightened than a typical traditional, residential house. And they're really not comparable. So this is a unique situation. Even office buildings, commercial buildings, anything that's not sleeping actually has exemptions in the code for those. Sleeping facilities do not, because they assume some people have sleep apnea, some people don't wake up easy. So in a fire situation, it's a lot different than being awake in an office building. So as it sits right now, I mean, it is a safety issue. I personally feel like I cannot meet code without breaking code. And ultimately it is, I don't know if everybody knows, but as of this year, the blanket, even the energy efficiency blanket exemption has been removed. They took that away this year. So now if I wanted to keep these windows, even if I wanted to, I have to go through a whole process just to keep them. And and part of the process is that a registered design professional has to write a letter that says that I have no alternative options and that adherence to the code would ruin the historical character. Well, unfortunately, in the historic buildings code, right in the code, it spells out what's acceptable and what's not. And these windows fully meet every requirement for replacement. So my registered design professionals are like, I'm not going to put my liability on the line when we do have an option. It would be a lie to write that letter to the building inspector. So we're kind of in this, without that letter, technically I'm not even supposed to get permit. And that letter, we're in this weird ground, and it's because it's a very, very specific commercial sleeping use. I'm in full agreement. This is not a precedent. This wouldn't happen in a single family. It's, if I want to take that risk for my family and I understand it, then I talk to my family and we take that risk and I put in the request. For me, it's different in this situation where if somebody comes to my hotel and in the middle of the night there's a fire, they expect everything to work and meet today's codes, especially being new. And if they're running around the room trying windows and they're broken and little kids, it's a tough situation. And I have not found one window person that understands the situation that's willing to anywhere near state that they're safe. And I haven't really had it a lot talked about, but to me, the cedar shake roof is very, very, very expensive and not in the budget. I mean, I like them. I'm excited about it. But I haven't heard any recognition whatsoever for that offer. So, I just want to make sure that that's an offer that people do want. Because if not, I mean, obviously there's a big cost to that. And in both meetings, I haven't even heard that talked about. So I guess the question is, is that a big ad? I mean, am I off on that cedar shake roof? In my past schooling, I thought that is pretty, bringing the house back to the historic materials. And then hopefully people understand that as much as even if I wanted these myself and I fought myself, it's still a code. It's an issue. And if there was a problem, if there was a fire, if somebody couldn't get out, there would be a wrongful death lawsuit. And with all of this information on public record in these forums, I hate to say it, but like my insurance company's like, we need somebody to stand by these windows. And that's the reason why we're here and why we're offering the mitigation, because we understand it's not a great task. It's an uncomfortable ask. But it's a commercial specific use, and the code every single year is getting stricter and stricter and stricter, and they're not really giving the blanket exemptions that they used to. So we're trying to make the best of what we have.
Right. All right. Well, I do want to hear from my colleagues. I'll just make a couple of just very brief comments, though, to clarify a couple of things. I'm also on a building subcommittee of the local energy advisory commission, and I'm familiar with historical exemptions and so forth. You're mostly right about that. But this board, as an official legal city entity, could give that certification that changing the windows would result in deterioration of historical values. So, to get that exemption from the energy code. So we'll just mention that, and the fact that it's quite clear from both Mr. Earls and everything else that you only need one operative window. We don't have to go, I don't want to get into that whole argument again, but have you, but I know that myself and a couple of the board members might have things to say about exactly how the historical windows may be safely operated and be able to be easily raised and stay up without any action on the part of the person doing the raising. Of course, probably for a number of reasons you would want to do or storm windows, mainly for energy efficiency, and you know, decent quality ones at that. Anyway, why don't I shut up for a minute and see what you know, because I do appreciate, you know, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I appreciate what the pickle you're in, to put it in the vernacular here. It's a change of use in a sense. It's not legally a change of use because it's been an inn, but it's a change of use from what it was 100 or 200 years ago, and that it was a private residence. So things have changed. I understand that there are various legal and ethical and moral requirements imposed on commercial establishments for all the obvious reasons, which you've already described. And I'm not gonna, I really can't argue against those. I fully sympathize with those requirements. And this, I don't think, speaking as chairman of this particular board, I don't think anyone on the board would want to impose something that was going to be inherently unsafe for either yourselves or any potential residents of the inn. All right, so how commissioners, I don't know if you saw, I don't think any of you were on the ZBA meeting. I think it was kind of hard. I was only attended via Zoom, so I didn't see these replacement windows in person. I think some specs were provided, and I can't disagree with the description in that, as far as I could determine, they appear to be very, very good quality, very nice replacement windows that would you'd need to go up and take a close look to tell the difference, so to speak. But obviously they wouldn't have the old wavy glass. They, you know, an experienced person wouldn't have too much trouble determining that they were replacements, but at least decent ones. But let me shut up for a minute and see if my colleagues would like to have something to say. Is this from whose presentation is this that we're looking at now?
Hi, Mr. Chair, it's Caitlin. This is ZBA presentation.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So there are
Yes, I'm
some-
familiar with those little pins. They're supposed to be spring loaded, by the way, so that when the sash goes up, they automatically pop into little notches that are cut into the moving sash, so that the window does not come slamming down on you unless you push the little button back in. My house has those, or at least part of it. I know Mr. Sartell, who's on the board, his house has those. We're familiar with those, and when they're operating properly, and by the way, they're neither expensive nor complicated, and you can even still acquire them. They don't require rebuilding the whole sash. They don't require any major rebuilding at all, and they would safely hold up the window. I think the only thing I could see wanting to do, though, is a lot of those old windows do not have little handles to easily lift them. So I could see wanting an interior handle to make it easier to lift the window. Let me think for a minute. Some of them are designed so that when the window is all the way down, it is locked in that position unless you push in the button. Others, you can raise the window. That's kind of a security thing. But anyway, so I know, Chris Sautel, you had, you know, I know you've been thinking about this. You live in the neighborhood. Did you want to make any comment or opine on this particular matter?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, these windows, I grew up with windows like these. I know exactly what they mean by slamming down your fingers and whatnot. When those mechanisms either not there or they're just so worn out they don't function anymore. I'm fully aware of those. It's happened. However, there is there are things that you can actually put into windows to allow them to, you know, safely stay at a certain level, as well as reverse that the windows don't go up all the way so children can't open them up and actually fall out a window. They're all spring loaded. They can easily, you can disable them very easily and whatnot. They're made mostly more for toddlers and things that couldn't be able to reach up to that. There is a lot of solutions. to these. It's not easy. I understand that. But at the same time, though, in order for this project to move forward, this was a requirement that was put in place. We understand that we run into issues and things, but we still need to have a common, understanding of this was required to be done. And was there not foresight before, when this project was happening, that these could maybe have been an issue, and that it's coming up now? I understand these projects are quite complicated and complex, and there's a time frame for everything. But just to say that we can't do them after the permit was issued strictly based on the windows, I think may need a lot of talking and conversation back and forth to come to a resolution. And that's
the one thing I could answer on that is just when we first, I actually didn't have a lot of involvement with the original discussions before we came to this board. I mean, I kind of let my architect carte blanche, hey, what they want, if we can make it work, let's do it. But the one thing that the only windows I've restored had the pulleys and weight systems. So when my architect came back and said, hey, they'd like this, this, and this, I said yes to everything. I don't think we fought on anything. But as I went into it, I think one of the first things I did is I lift the window, it slammed shut and cracked one of the pieces of glass. And right now, I really would like to talk, is there mitigation? Because, I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. We could talk all day. I don't see my 5-year-old being able to open this window in an emergency situation. I don't think he could even reach that pin with his hands, lifting it that high. And I don't feel comfortable with it. And I know we say that they have, and I've reiterated, they do have mechanisms. The problem is the person that puts them in says they don't work good and they're not good for this application. So in that situation, I guess, there may never be a solid support. And yes, we're excited for this, but is there something in a historic building that can add to the contributing features? An example, if it had vinyl siding, obviously going back to wood siding would be a major add. And that's what we were thinking. We're trying to find things that would add to the contributing factors of a historic building. And obviously the sheet or shake roof is not historically accurate. So it's tough because I feel very strongly about the code issue. And I think if it got pushed, it would be, justified. I think it would turn out, but I'm not here to create a precedent. I don't want to go that route. I think personally, we could determine from people not staying there and not their house, but who's going to take the decision? Because if there is a problem or if there is a safety hazard that happens, it's different in a commercial situation. I wouldn't sue my own family, but somebody else's family could sue my family. And that's how I stand with it. So that's where I really have not heard any talk about the mitigation offer or even things that maybe we could do to make it, a more historically accurate and significant. Because to me, coming from a master's degree in architecture, took architectural history every year through 5 years, I mean, these wood windows look very historically accurate. They do not take away from the character of the home, in my opinion. I think storm windows do. But I do know that when I walk down the street and see a historically accurate, just like this picture, a cedar shake roof, real wood siding, real wood window, I actually like gas lanterns, I like copper gutters, stuff like that. I think the accumulation of all of that really does produce a very historically significant visual, rather than just living with, say, vinyl siding and storm windows, but buried behind them back there's an old window. I mean, it's kind of comes to, is it the architecture or is it the museum portion of, saving it? But I could say, as the person who my kids are going to be staying there, I have 5 and a 7-year-old, and, the person owning it and the person's family who is going to get the lawsuit if it doesn't go right, I don't feel comfortable, saying, oh, no, yeah, no, we'll be fine if something does happen and no one's around to take responsibility, and there's no window manufacturer with any sort of insurance, that my family won't be taken down for it. So that's what we're trying to push mitigation. If I thought this was a slam dunk, we'd be in court and I wouldn't be mitigating anything. I'm really want to try to have people understand my family's concerns of the liability, which I don't think anybody here would want to sign a liability waiver that I'm making this decision, and if anything happens, it's on me. And I don't want to do that either. And that's what I feel like I'm being forced to do. So I really want to focus on, is there aspects of the building that, like the cedar shake roof, that we could mitigate? Because just like this picture, 99% of the public are going to look at that and look at it, looks like a historic wood window, and with no storm window, which is refreshing to me. I personally don't like them. But you know, that's what I'd love the discussion. And in both boards, I guess if we're not going to have the discussion, then why am I doing the cedar shake roof is the question. So are there things that could help the building instead of just going on something that, even if you guys voted yes, I don't even think I meet code. So it's like, it's I what do you do? And it's not that I try to bait and switch.
Let me just interrupt you there because we're getting a little repetitive. I hear your concerns. And to me, I'm not so much worried about the code, because I think there are, from what I've been hearing from Mr. Earls and the various things like this we've been through, I'm not too worried about that, but I definitely hear your insurance concerns and fire safety issues. My wife worked for a legal firm for many years, and there was a fire at the Plaza Hotel in Boston, in fact, that they were involved in. In any event, in fact, she was very upset that that was the very room that I was staying in when I was there. This was many years ago. At any rate, so we're in an interesting position here, in that ordinarily it would be, to use your term, slam dunk, that they should be restored, but I think we do have special considerations here. But I want to hear from some of my other teammates, because this is not a unilateral decision on my part, but I do want to quickly get to a point where we can render some sort of opinion to the ZBA. They've basically just asked for some guidance from us. What do we think? These replacement windows, we think that that's going to be a real kiss of death, so to speak, to the historical values, or given that it's now an inn and not a private residence, is the windows that they've chosen, and keeping the orientation, the pattern, the locations of the window openings, the size of the window openings, keeping all that the same. And as Mr. Laguerre has suggested, maybe even throwing in some mitigation, by mitigation meaning some compensating factors to help it maintain that historic appearance, with like a shake roof, which I know some of those old Canberra roof houses did have, and a few of them, I can think of a couple around town, have been restored, and they look very, very historically accurate. Anyway, but let me hear from someone else. Chris, Faye, I notice you've taken yourself off mute, and as has Ed Neumer as well. I see Ed, I see your hand up. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, well, that was a lot of talking there for a while, so I kind of almost missed the point of everybody's talking. So I just say this, that safety should trump historical value, and that's just it, period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shouldn't take that long, and need so many people talking so many sentences and all that, right? Safety trumps everything. That's the issue, it goes with I go with safety.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Maybe I'm the wrong person for the committee, but it's just like, that's just the way it should be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I would just
opinion.
modify it slightly, saying that safety would trump historical values if a reasonable compromise that satisfies both can't be found. Christopher Fay, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief.
Yep.
So I've been thinking about this recently, because in 2018 we had a major long, like 11 o'clock at night, discussion on bricks and sidewalks. And a woman had come in and raised the issue of safety. And as I've been, as you walk around, you go, these old bricks are dangerous, especially the older that you get. And I'm gonna have to side with Ed on this one, that I don't know. We're at a crossroads here, because I've been by this property. It's exposed to the elements. It doesn't seem to be moving forward, and we're on the third rail of the Preservation Trust and the Historic Commission Newburyport, which are windows. And we all live in historic homes for the most part, but we don't live without electric lights. We don't live without Wi-Fi, and we don't live without indoor plumbing. But there's something about windows in this city, and I know I'm being a heretic. That rail, and I'll put on the record, I could care less about windows. So I think if it's a safety issue, like, I'm not going to die on the hill of windows. When this property is in disrepair, somebody let it become an inn and then let it fall into disrepair. And I understand the position. I respect the Preservation Trust. I have a lot of respect for what they do. But I think that on this one, if this can't move forward because it doesn't meet code and there's reasons that codes change, then I don't think we have much of a choice. I don't think the zoning board has much choice. So I'm okay. And I don't negotiate away this and that. Like, let's just focus on the window issue and solve that problem. And I would have to side with the safety issue.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher. Ed, your hand is still up. Did you need to say something else, or just didn't put it down yet?
I think I don't know how to put it down, but I will in a second.
Okay.
But just to piggyback off of, I'll attempt to do it off of Chris's comments. I mean, totally agree. Electricity, plumbing, Wi-Fi. Let's stop with the nonsense. There's no need to keep discussing this thing. Safety, safety is important. That's it.
Okay. Andrew Bernhardt, I saw your hand go up. Did you want to comment?
I just had to unmute.
Yeah, thanks.
My issue is if the old windows, and I'm not a safety expert, and I believe that safety is a requirement. That being said, as I said, I'm not an expert, and I don't know if the window lady is it either. I'm just wondering, is there a way of making the old windows safe? I mean, if the plugs are maintained and kept in good working order, are they considered safe?
What we've gotten so far is the Windows lady, her exact quote was, they're not 100% safe. And her first comment was, they don't work amazing. And that's what first thing she said to me. So no one has thrown the word safe out there. They've said that it makes a situation of she called it guillotine window, and I think somebody here said the same thing. She said that takes the guillotine out of it, but it does not work amazing. That was her exact words. So
yeah, let me chime in here. Andrew, let me try to answer your question this way. Especially for private residence, yeah, I mean, they can be operable. Both Chris and I have things like that in our house. I don't know if Chris still has his operable, but I do. And I have to admit, I can't think of so offhand if there's been times windows have slammed down, but it certainly it usually happens when the spring breaks and the pin doesn't operate reliably. But hey, this wood is old, right? And these things can happen. If for a private house, I probably would be on the other side of the fence, but on this one, I think so from what I'm hearing particularly from Ed and to a certain extent and Chris, they're they're pretty clear that, hey, there's no question here. If these things can't be made reliable, and I think they can be made pretty reliable, but would I personally want to be the one sitting on the other end of the liability concern? No, I wouldn't want to be in that particular hot seat for all the obvious reasons. Maybe the fire would never happen, but that you can't you can't bank on that, right? I don't know if that answers your question any better, Andrew.
That does. That helps me quite a bit. Thank you.
Any other comment from the board? Because I'll pause here. What I'm thinking is I can write a memo back to the ZBA, basically explaining that where we seem to be coming down is that and while from a historical perspective, it reminds me a little bit of there was another one we had. Oh, it was the down in Market Square. And there's a couple that have happened like this. From strictly historic preservation perspective, the correct thing to do would be to restore the windows. I mean, period. However, there are other circumstances at play here that really can't be ignored. So I think that where we seem to be headed is that given the circumstances of the use of this structure and the need for requirement for safety, I'm not going to use the word code because I think there are things there that can be, I think I would say let's focus on just the overall safety and insurance and being able to sleep at night argument. So that in this case, that the quality of the windows that they've proposed, given that they match in size, configuration, etc., are a reasonable compromise. But I would ask one other thing, since Mr. Laguerre has asked about it. Would you guys feel that it would be helpful to maintain a little bit more of the historic character to go with a shake roof rather than an asphalt shingle type roof? The audience can't see the shrugs. I saw your shrug,
Yes.
Andrew. But I personally think that would be kind of a nice touch.
It is nice.
So we could suggest that if the builder is willing to do that, that would, I think that would enhance the historical character, in my personal opinion. But I don't want to speak for the whole board. Does anyone have an opinion either way on that?
Can I chime in?
Who is that?
This is Alan.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Alan.
So I would agree with what you're saying as far as the shingles go. I also think that providing the builder is continued to do what they agreed in the original with the original architect, and this is the anomaly because this is just something that came up as a safety issue. Then providing it's not okay, we got this with the windows, and let's see if we can change something else. You're going to continue with what was decided on and agreed upon and with the original architect, and keeping all the historical features and redoing the door and the shutters and everything else.
Yeah,
I think that in the window is basically replicates the old windows.
Right.
I'd see that as sort of like a non-argument, it's a safety thing. And like you were saying, Glenn, if we're in that room, we don't want to be like, geez, I hope if there's a fire, this thing's not going to come down and I'm going to be trapped in here looking outside. So that just seems like it's definitely a long conversation for just to get to the point that it's a safety thing. But bookended with, you got to make sure that everything else that was agreed upon during the negotiations in the beginning are adhered to. And there's not another, I want to discuss that.
Okay, and I do see a hand up from our building commissioner, so I will recognize you in just a second, Greg, and I appreciate you attending this meeting. But one quick comment, I'm really glad you mentioned something there, Alan, and that's the other things, because there have been, please don't take this the wrong way, but we have in years past have, this kind of creeping thing where one domino after the other fell in promises not fully kept. So are you willing, but in the you in this sentence refers to, Ben and Doug, willing to commit to, and it sounds like you said earlier in this meeting that you were willing to commit to maintaining the other historical preservation things you had already agreed to. It's just these windows seem to be the holdup. Am I correct there?
That's without question, Mr. Chair. And again, not only do everything else we promised, but the roof. And the roof.
Okay, thank you. That sounded like Ben, right? I'm sorry, Doug Duchesne.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Greg, Caitlin, could you unmute Greg Earls so he can make a quick comment? I think he wanted to say something. I see his hand up. Mr. Earls, did you want to say something real quick?
Can you hear me now?
We can, yes.
Great. I just want your decision to be based on your decision historically, not code.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that, and that's why I said I don't even want to mention the term code in
Thank you.
this, because I understand what you were saying about code requirements, but I think that we are I think there are other factors besides strictly adherence to code. At least that's my opinion anyway, and I heard from several of my colleagues that they seem to agree. So yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Earls. And while, yeah, maybe it'll make certain things easier as far as code, there might be ways around that. But I think that the builder, and I certainly hope we're not disappointed in this, but they seem to be making a good faith effort to keep the restoration perspective in mind, do the right thing by the building and their hopefully future occupants.
I believe
All
that.
right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate you sticking with us for this somewhat lengthy discussion, which I think we can bring to an end. I think I got a sense of where we all stand. I know Ken Swanton of the ZBA is here attending, so he's heard the whole thing. So Ken, I will send an email reflecting the discussion we've had here tonight to your chair and for your board, so that you can at least have in time for your discussion. I guess it's next week. At least the benefit of this discussion for your deliberations. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and Attorney DeShane and Ben, thank you for coming in. And I think we want to move on to our next item on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, someone say something?
Yes, I just wanted to thank the board for your time.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
DeShane. You're welcome. All right, let's move on. 350 High Street, a proposed preservation restriction. Attorney Mead, are you representing on this one? Who is, let me see. I think I have a note here. Who is on this one?
Mr. Chair, I am. I was muted.
Oh, okay. Do you want to take this? Do you have a preference as to whether we talk about this one or 124 High Street first, or does it matter?
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
Hopefully this won't be too long.
Okay. All right. What do you want to? Why don't you? Well, let me just say really, really quick introduction here. We've had several of these, as I'm sure just so that the board knows. It wasn't quite clear in the application, at least not all the materials were there, but there's this process called a 6C special permit process, where they can take a lot that's zoned or that's allowed for two-family use, and basically put a second structure on the lot, which is normally not permitted, but they can get a permit for that. But in the case of this, they put a preservation restriction on the existing property if it is a historic property, and so on. All right, so that's my brief introduction. I want to let you speak, Attorney Mead, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so to the chair's point, so the city has a process, it's called a 6C special permit, where if your property is in a district that allows two-family use and you have sufficient frontage and sufficient area to qualify for that two-family use, you can put a separate independent structure on the lot to allow for the second family use. In this instance, the Josiah Little Street at 350 the Josiah Little House at 350 High Street currently has a two-family use within the original historic structure. And what would happen in this instance, where there is an outbuilding already on the property, which is not historic, but which we will be modifying, the Josiah Little House itself will be converted inside. No, there won't be any work on the outside, will be converted inside back to a single family residence. And so there will continue to only be 2 residential units on the lot. But as part of the 6C process, if in fact you have a historic structure on the property, like the Josiah Little House, then you need to offer a preservation restriction for that house. And so before we go to the planning board, we submit a draft preservation restriction to the Historic Commission. So you have it, and if you have any comments on it, we can hear about it. And then we go to the planning board. If the planning board says, yes, we're good with this, then what will happen is we will then, assuming the plans stay the same, we will then submit it to Mass Historic, and Mass Historic will give us their comments, and then we'll come back to the Historic Commission, and the Historic Commission will say, yep, we agree with their comments or not, and then we'll finalize it and close it out with the planning board. The document that you have before you this evening is the same preservation restriction that this board, this commission has approved previously for a 6C special permit, and the Mass Historic Commission has also likewise approved, although in that instance, there was work actually being done on the historic structure, and that's the Lynch House down on Merrimack Street. So this restriction is perpetual in nature. It goes on, applies to the Josiah Little House, which was constructed in or around 1780. For those of you who have not driven by it, once you've seen this, it's up almost not quite to where the entry to the senior center is, or the Bresnahan School used to be. Yeah, go ahead, Caitlin. Can you pull that up? So what I provided to the commission is the draft restriction, including all of the exhibits and including the photographs. So the Mass Historic is very particular, as well they should be, about the exhibits that get attached to the preservation restriction. In this instance, as I said before, we're not doing any work to the Josiah Little House itself. And these are just the photographs of the house where the restriction will apply.
Okay.
What we're proposing to do is amend and revise or renovate the garage that is on the property. And there are very strict restrictions under the 6C about how much can be done to that as well. But here's the existing Josiah Little House. Again, this is where the restriction will apply. If there are any modifications to this in the future, major modifications, which are again are all outlined and controlled by the restriction, the applicant would need to come back, or the property owner at the time would need to come back to the commission for authority to do major renovations. There are some minor renovations that are allowed to be done, but anything major comes back to the commission. So that's why we're here, not necessarily for you to quote approve the restriction, but I think probably would be helpful to the planning board to know that you would want a restriction on this property.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Mead. Quick question. And I apologize for not having time to view the restriction in any great detail. Would it cover any of the interior?
No, it's only exterior.
Okay. Just as because I'm assuming that if it's going from 2-family 1, there might be interior changes, but it sounds like that's outside the scope of both the restriction and our purview here. Is that
yes,
right? Okay.
That's correct.
And the other quick question I had, what was it now? I can't think of it, so I'll just pass. I know what it was. Typically, we pay a visit to the site so we can see this in person. I mean, I can say that speaking for myself anyway, that judging from the photos, it's been well taken care of and looks like the exterior has been nicely preserved so far. So it looks like it looks like a good candidate at first glance. So I'd like to get a feel from the commissioners if they feel this is sufficient to at least express the sentiment that, yeah, this preservation restriction is a desirable thing here, or would they feel that they'd like to see it in person? Again, keeping in mind that we're not dealing with interior here at all, just exterior.
And we're not doing any work to this house.
Right. Yeah, judging from the photos, it doesn't look like it really needs any particular work at the moment anyway.
Correct. It's been very well taken care of.
Yep. Well, I'm seeing everyone's staying muted and no one's saying a word. So either they, I don't, but I can see from some of my, some people I can see in video, they're definitely not sleeping. So they are still with me. So I take it from that people, but I do need to get your guys' point of view. Are you favorably disposed to the commission accepting a a preservation restriction on this lovely building here? It's kind of transition, kind of Georgian to federal period. It's got some characteristics of both, I'd say. But anyway, anyone not disposed to it? Joe Morgan, I see your hand shot up.
Well, I just have a question.
Yep.
I think we're obligated, right? Do we have a choice here? This is part of the 60 process.
Yes, we do. If at least as I understand it, and I'm sure Attorney Mead will correct me if I'm in error, or someone will, that if we feel that the house is for some reason not particularly worthy of being preserved, we could say we don't particularly want to take on a preservation restriction for that dump type of thing.
I don't think that's the case here. I mean, it's described in the whereases in the PR. I think it's a pretty well written PR from what I can tell. I did a quick scan, and it seems like there's a pretty good description of the property. And all of I just lined it up paragraph by paragraph. It seems like everything is there, and pretty much boilerplate is complete. I saw paragraph 29. I'm using 342 Merrimack as my sort of my template. But I see that paragraph 29 it's regularly omitted, but it's the subordination of prior liens, and I think we should just throw that in there just to complete the boilerplate. But I think yes, it's worthy of a PR. It looks like a handsome property. It's definitely a historical property, and I think we're obligated to protect it.
Okay, so in this case, Attorney Mead, yeah, Joe, I couldn't have said it better myself. It sounds like you went through it in a little bit more detail than I did, but I saw noticed some of those same things. What are you, is there anything that's A, required, or B, preferred that we provide the planning board for them to go into the special permit process?
I would appreciate a vote from the board that you're willing to hold the restriction subject to final review and approval of MHC.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay, so it sounds like I'm gonna make note of this so we get this right. So the commission is in favor of taking on a PR what was the word you used?
Subject to
you're right, subject to, that's what I was looking for.
Final
Subject to
and approval of MHC.
Final review and approval. So I just want to make it clear that this vote or motion would be not that we're granting our official approval of the preservation restriction at this time, but that we're favorably disposed, and we'll take a good close look at it. We'll point out things such as that paragraph that Joe pointed out just now, and we're happy to give you that feedback in writing, Attorney Mead. So why don't I just go ahead for the sake of time? I'll propose the motion from the chair that the motion is that the chair notify the planning board that we are favorably disposed to taking on a preservation restriction for this property. This historic property, I would say, and pending or subject to our more detailed and final review and approval of the actual draft. Does that sound good?
Yes, thank you.
Is everyone clear on what the motion is? I'm not hearing anything, and I can't see everybody. So
I'm clear on it.
Yep.
Okay,
Clear.
I'll repeat it one more time. I'm gonna write it down too, so Gretchen will have the benefit of this. Chair shall notify planning board that NHC is hang on, I'm typing as fast as I can. if they are pending or subject to final review and approval. Okay, so I'll restate the motion now that we're clear on that. So everyone's clear. Let me just one other thing here I need to do. So just bear with me a moment and we can move on. Okay. Okay. The motion is that the chair shall notify the planning board that the NHC is favorably disposed toward a preservation restriction on this property, subject to our final review and approval. And of course, the PR is not part of this motion, but just so we understand the PR itself is subject to review by the Mass Historical, etc. Right now, all we're voting on now is that we do feel it's a historic property worthy of a preservation restriction, and we as a commission are willing to be the grantee of that. Okay.
Did we need a second on that?
Yes, we do need a second. So
I will second that. This is Biff.
Okay, thank you, Biff. So let's just say chair and Biff. Thank you, Biff. Okay, so that's the motion. Mr. Bernhardt, would you?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Baus.
Yes.
Thank you, Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Thank you, Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, Chris Sartell.
Yes.
Okay, Ed Neumer. I'm sorry. I think that was a yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. All right, so I'll take care of making sure that happens, Attorney Mead. Let's go down to your other item, so you can kind of keep your mic active. This is 124 High Street, again involving your applicant and the planning board. This is a downtown overlay district advisory review. So I think we've had a few of those before. Do you want to go? Oh, I see Ms. Graff is with us again too. So would you like to go ahead and introduce this one for us, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And for the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street, Newburyport. And with me also is Eileen Graff, who's the architect on the project, and Chris Horn, who is the manager of Newburyport Homes LLC, who is the owner of the property. And my colleague, Ben Taylor, is also here. As the chair indicated, this is a DOD advisory review, and this is for the property at 124 High Street. The applicant proposes to renovate the main structure and convert it from mixed use to four residential units. Currently, there's 5 commercial condominiums in it and 2 residential units. The DOD review for the board seeks input from the Historic Commission to the Planning Board regarding the significance of the historic building or structure proposed for demolition and the relative importance of such historic building or structure to the setting within the DOD.
Right.
And just to be really clear, we're not actually proposing to demolish the building, but the word term demolition within the DOD is pretty broad. Right. And what we're proposing to do is make a couple of minor adjustments to the building, but in the rear, add an addition. But actually the rear, which Eileen will review for you in a minute, includes a number of already existing, more recent additions, which will be essentially covered up by this proposed addition in the rear. If you can go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, I'll just comment that the ordinance and its definition of demolition includes partial demolition. So it's pretty broad.
Yep. So this building is in the R3 zoning district in the downtown overlay district and was constructed around 1814 according to the Form B, and the district data sheets do list the structure as contributory. The structure is described as a brick federal style structure. I think it's important to note that this structure, and we put this in our filing for you, and I do have one correction. The structure suffered a pretty significant fire in 2001. We submitted to you an article that said the fire was actually in 2007, but the building permits to repair the structure and rebuild the structure were actually dated 2001. So I think the article was incorrect on the date, or there was a typo or something like that. So the fire is actually in 2001. If you can go to the next slide, please. So here is the Form B, and we don't have to go through everything, but the DoD requires us to give you as much information we can on the historic structure. But this at the time, it's called Sewell Place, excuse me. At the time in the 1980s when this was done, it was a funeral home and a residence. So it was mixed use in the 70s and 80s. And then next slide, please. And again, this is the rest of the Form B that talks about the significance of the structure. Next slide, please. And here's our the district data sheets that indicate that the property is contributory, which of course we're not surprised. I think it's important to see the evolution of the site on the Sanborn maps. So if you can go to the first one, please. And what is interesting on this is that the property evolved, but the property itself evolved over time, and the structures that existed on the property kind of changed. So here we have the earliest Sanborn map, which is 1888, and you can see the structure at the front in the circle in the red there. Next slide. And then here's the 1894 Sanborn map, and now you see that there is an outbuilding immediately behind it, well, off to the right. And then there's a different empty parcel of land in the back, which eventually becomes and merges with this lot. Next slide. And now the outbuilding's gone. And this is in 1900. Next slide, please. And now the lot actually includes that empty lot that was to the rear of it, and there is no outbuilding. Next slide. 1914, we have a little amended appendage on the side of the structure in the back. Next slide. And the 1924 assessor's map, the appendage is gone, the outbuilding is gone, and you see the empty lot to the rear. Next slide, please. Here's a photo that is published in the Newburyport Old Houses, 1912, and you can see the nice fence out front and actually the great trees that existed at the time. Next slide, please. And sadly, this is what happened in 2001. So as we talk about windows, you'll note, and Eileen did this and showed this to you on the window inventory. None of the windows that are in this structure are original to it. They were all obviously taken out during this, at the time this was rebuilt as part of the fire. I suspect that it was at this time that a lot of the rear of the structure was rebuilt to the form that you're going to see in our photographs shortly. Next slide, please. So one of the things you need to look at, of course, is the setting. The surrounding neighborhood includes, other brick federalists to the west and a wood clapboard row house to the east. In our proposal, the space between these structures and in front of the house will remain unchanged. This, of course, is directly across from the mall. The rear of the property abuts other parking lots for the surrounding commercial properties and residences on Park Street. And the iron fence in front entry of the structure will be unchanged. Next slide, please. So what is going to change, I'm going to let Eileen go through it, but it will become a multifamily structure instead of a mixed use structure. The mixed use is actually not permitted in the R3 district, and so it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. The multifamily use is permitted with a special permit from the planning board in this instance because it's in the DOD. So we'll be going to the planning board both for the DOD and the special permit for the multifamily use. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eileen, who's going to talk about the changes to the structure and what we're proposing to do.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. So maybe we'll just orient on the site plan to start with. Perfect, thank you. So the right side of that drawing is High Street to help orient, putting that center stairs going into the building off of High Street. What I want to cover is the minor changes that we're proposing, and I think that that will likely be easier on each elevation. So if we could slide to the next drawing, great. So I've placed existing and proposed side by side just to help reiterate the minimal changes. The front facade, the only change that's happening here is there's a cellar sash that we just need to extend to make it egress acceptable. Seems like egress is the topic of the night. So this is the bottom left corner there. You can see on the right drawing is the location where a current awning window will be replaced with a casement window that is proposed to have the check rail to appear like a double hung. But given that size, it doesn't meet the size requirements needed to be egress, so therefore it's a casement in operation. So that's the only change on the front elevation. Everything else remains the same.
What about the stairway there on the right?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So you could see the side of the stair. I was going to sort of point it out on the other elevation, but yes, there's a side view of a proposed stair. And if you'd like to, maybe we'll go 2 slides down so you can see that in elevation. Oop, sorry. One more, 3 slides down. There we go. So that stair that we were just talking about is in the bottom middle, right before that sunroom that's there, where there's an existing window that this double hung there that we are replacing in that opening just to have a French door, just so that they can have access to this gorgeous side yard that's behind the fence. Also on that elevation is a similar egress window on the bottom left corner that you can see there. Stretching the window just another 20 inches is enough just to get it egress acceptable. And what you can see on the right top of that of the right hand drawing, just in beyond, and I'm pointing it out and we'll slide to the rear elevation, but just so you could see in side view the change that you would see from the east side, and that's an addition, a wood structure addition to replace an existing couple existing decks and spiral stair. So with that, let's slide to the rear elevation. That's it. Perfect. All right, as you can see on the left side drawing is existing. And the space that we're talking about is the right side of the rear, where you've got 2 levels of deck and then the spiral coming down from that lower level deck. And we are proposing to replace that, enclose that space with a wood structure, taking in a similar approach to what's already exists there, which is not a full foundation, put it on posts, and then enclose some space using clapboards to distinguish from the brick building, 6/6 windows that are similar in proportion to the existing per floor. As they tailor up on the top level, they get shorter. And then also on that elevation, there is a picture window right in the middle. That's actually an elevator tower that you see, that tall piece in the middle. To the right of that is a picture window. And if you look to the right drawing, you can see that picture window change to French doors for access to the back deck there. That's behind that solid wall. So those are the changes that we're proposing. You know, we felt important to stay off the corner, to respect the original brick. We've kept the eave lines lower than the main structure, emphasizing the sort of priority and primary form of the original structure, and again, change in material and type of construction to also distinguish its different qualities. And with that, actually, there's one more drawing. There is I don't know if, does it?
Eileen, before you go to that drawing, I just want to point out also that if you were to remove what Eileen is proposing as the enclosed areas at a later date, the brick wall would still be there. That's not being removed on the inside of this addition. And those openings are going to stay the same, right? Eileen, do you want to comment on that?
That's correct. So essentially, each level there is a room that will use that existing opening that you see as those French doors entering onto the deck. Those will remain the entry door to each of those rooms. So that brick wall will stay intact. And so should there come a day where somebody wants to remove that, it will all be right as it was.
Mm-hmm. And then you can go down to the proposed garage that we're going to put at the back.
Yes, so in the back of the property, just a small gable structure, 23 by 24 in footprint, just to allow for some covered garage space for the residential units. And this will sit in the rear of the property, which we could maybe review once we go back to the site plan as far as its location. But similar in construction, wood, we'll use clapboards there, architectural roof shingles for the roof.
And,
So
and
was,
if
I'm
we
sorry
do go
to-
back to
I
the
have two
site
real quick
plan,
question. So did I see an additional structure other than the garage on the
right, that's
on
why
the
I was
lot?
going to take, yeah, I was going to, Mr. Chair, I was going to take you to the site plan.
Okay.
So currently there is, in the middle of this plan, you can see the white footprint.
Mhm.
That's an existing garage, and it has, which is more recently built. And it has a kind of an appendage off the back that's proposed to be removed.
Mhm.
And then the new garage is the yellow or orangish, if you will, or peach, I guess, at the very back of the parking. Right now, that entire area is all paved.
Right. Okay.
So if you could slide down to the My Maps view there, Eileen, excuse me, Caitlin. So there you can see that a little bit better, Mr. Chair. As you can see, it lines up, you know, if you stand in front of the driveway and look down the driveway, you're going to be able to see the new garage, but otherwise you can't see it. It doesn't stand out.
And the thing that's a garage now, I'm sorry if maybe because it's getting late. Is that being removed or converted to something else or what?
Nope, it's going to stay a garage, but that little appendage on the back is being
will be
removed.
removed. Right. Got it. Okay. And I'd love to know what that weird thing on the roof of the main structure is. I'm sure that maybe when someone was redoing it and after the fire, they had this clever idea to do, I don't know what that's supposed to be up there, but it's very
Well,
odd.
maybe we can see the photos. I don't know. It might show something. So, the best photos are actually the most recent marketing photos for this. So, if you go to slide 24, Caitlin. So here's a view from across the street.
Yep.
Again, you know, basically, you're not going to be able to see that window well on the first on that front view because of the way the landscaping is, as well as the iron fence. Next slide. And then there is a more bird's eye view. I don't know if you can see there. Oh yeah, you can see that thing on the top. Oh, is that the head house? No. What is that?
It is the head house. Yeah. So when they rebuilt that, I think that's when they took the opportunity to carve it away from that hip roof and make a roof deck. And that cupola travels up the center stairwell up to that top spot.
Okay, so that's just a little sunbathing spot or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite unique because if I could comment just as sort of widow walks or such, because its location where it looks over downtown, there aren't that many trees. So it's kind of unique in that other locations on High Street, you get blocked by from the foliage, but this one is this clear view over the downtown. And it's really stunning.
Okay.
But that's existing. We're not proposing that.
Yep. No, I know. I was just curious about it because it just seems so odd.
And then there's another view. Next slide, please. And again, obviously these views. So in these, and we've got some that are ground level, you can see all of the addition that was put on during the reconstruction in the back for access. Next slide, please. And here you go. That's the rear of the building right now. Next
So
slide.
that tan colored thing on the left, to the extreme left of this photo, that's an adjacent property, I take it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the back of a Park Street condos, I believe.
Okay.
Or State Street.
That's
Park
right.
Street.
State
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah, probably State, because Park
State
would be
Street,
to the left
right.
in this
That's
photo.
the back of the State Street.
Yep.
And again, here's the spiral staircase, which will now be gone and be in that addition that is being proposed.
Right.
Next slide. And here's the side where you're going to have the stairs where that window is next to the sunroom.
Yep.
Next slide.
Interesting little, I suppose, Eileen, would you call those Orioles, those little mini bay window things?
Oh, the two in the living room?
Yeah,
That's a good question. They are kind of curious, aren't they?
yeah. Anyway, I don't want to, it's late, so I don't want to.
So this is the existing garage,
Right.
obviously more recently built, and that's the appendage is going to be removed.
Right.
Next
Got it.
slide, please. And here's across the street from the mall to get a better idea. Next slide, please. And here's a different angle from the mall.
And our pal George.
And our pal George. I'm going to give you a little history. Maybe some of you don't know this, but do you know that's only one of two statues of George Washington standing up in the world, actually?
Really?
This one is here and the other one is in Paris.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So, and then I think that might be it. Is that the end of the slides? And then we have the window inventory, but I don't know that we really don't need to go through that given.
No, probably
Right.
not at this point.
Right.
And I don't want, well, I mean, are you pretty much done for?
Yes. And so
Okay.
we'd ask the commission to give a favorable recommendation to the planning board.
Okay. Well, as you know, I'm sure that, you know, our main focus is on enlighten the planning board as to the history of the place and so on. And also we can touch on whether or not we feel, in our opinion, there was any damage to the historical values by what you're proposing to do here. So I think for the sake of time, what I'll do is I'm going to summarize what I think the board would probably like to say, and then I'll ask my colleagues if they would like to make any modifications to that. Because what we do in this case is the chair or someone he might delegate will write up the advisory or historical report on this per the ordinance. And so what it sounds like, most of it is going to be, I'll be quite honest, I sort of cheat by copying some of the stuff from the Form B, and some of the stuff may come from, you know, your research that your firm has done, Attorney Mead, and so on. So we give the planning board a sense of the history here, and then it seems that my view is that I don't see a whole lot of damage, if any, to the historical values being done by what you've proposed. So that's what I would say, but let me hear, please, if you disagree and think there's something in the proposed plans here that is a cause for concern, speak now, and I can include that in the report. Everyone's awfully quiet. Silence will be, what's that famous thing? Silence is consent or something, right? Yeah. Showing my my social history here. Okay, well, I see some smiles, some nods. I don't see everyone's video, but it sounds like and no one's raised a hand or anything. Two people are unmuted. That's Ed and Andrew. Did you want to say anything or just happen to be unmuted?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine with what was stated.
Okay, so it sounds like you guys feel that what I just proposed is acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. I'll get that written up. So, Attorney Mead, so I think you heard that. So what you can expect is that we'll review the historical history here a little bit. It's interesting that Sewell himself apparently never lived in that area, but that family owned the land. Those of you who know anything about your local history, Sewell, I believe he was at one time one of the judges in the notorious Salem witch trials. It's something that I happen to have a personal connection to because my wife is a descendant of Rebecca Nurse.
Oh, look at that.
Yes. So anyway, okay, so we'll get that in. Do you know when you're appearing before the planning board, Attorney Mead?
First meeting in December, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, good. That gives me a little bit of time, but it shouldn't be too bad. I'll try to get that done we got holidays coming up, but it'll be probably certainly be by the end of November at any rate.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, Mr. Chair.
Sure. You're
you.
quite welcome. Thanks for sticking with us in this somewhat late night. I think that we're almost down to the end here. A couple of quick things. Hopefully you had a chance to review the minutes for our last meeting, which was October 26th. They looked okay to me. Does anyone feel moved to make a motion that we approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I think that sounded like Biff. Is that right?
That's correct, this is Biff.
Okay.
And this is Joe. I will second that.
Okay. So the motion is to approve those minutes. So Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Biff?
Yes.
Okay, Christopher Fay? Did we lose Chris? Oh, that's right. You weren't, sorry. So you were abstaining because you weren't around, right? Your audio's kind of not there. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. Chris Sautel, were you at that meeting? Was that the one? Yeah, you were there.
I think so.
Last meeting, right?
I think, yeah, I think.
I think you were, yeah. It was the one before that you missed.
Right.
Cavorting and
That would
partying.
be a yes for me.
Okay. And let's see, Mr. Marquis, I don't think, you were there for part of the meeting, as I recall, correct?
Yes,
Alan?
that's right.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
All right. Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We already have 4 yays. So I'm going to put you down as an abstention. And Ed, I don't think you were here for that meeting. Is that correct? Ed Neumer?
Yes, I was not.
Okay, but we still have at least a chair, Chris Sartell, Joe Morgan, Biff Baus, and Bernhard all assenting, so that it looks like 5 yeas. So those will be approved. The only quick update from the chair is that, Joe, we are looking into your renewal. Caitlin, did you hear anything back from the city? You said, I think you said you sent an email to the city, to the mayor's office. Any
That's
word on
correct.
that?
I did send email. No, not yet.
Okay, we'll follow up on that, Joe. So fear not. I have to check up on my own too, because I know mine was up.
It's a dresser, looks like a dresser, right?
Yeah, because a lot of vanities look like dressers.
I hear talking, but I'm not sure who's talking or why.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Alan. I'll mute myself.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Alan. All right, so that was the only update I had. One other real quick thing. I did pass along the email to Chuck Griffin and his attorney, Jeff Roloffs, with which I went over at the last meeting. Basically, they need to shape it up to be more compliant. I'd like it to look a lot like the one that we just looked at for High Street there, Joe. I think I agree with you on that. That's, and that there was one of those ones on Merrimack Street was recently accepted by the MHC. So we know that is a good, valid format. So there's no reason why they can't, it shouldn't be too difficult for them to comply with that. So I haven't heard back from them yet on that though. So that's it for me. The only thing left, unless someone else has something to add, is a motion to adjourn, and we can say goodnight. If we hurry up, we can do it before 10 o'clock. Okay, I didn't catch the voice. Is that Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, and is there a seconded?
Chris Sautel. Second.
Okay, Chris Sautel seconds. So I can do what I did last. Well, maybe I'll drive Gretchen crazy. Is there anyone opposed to adjourning? I have unanimous consent to adjourn then. Oh boy, I love saying that. It makes me feel like Speaker of the House. Okay, so very good. Thanks for your attention to this somewhat long evening. I tried to move it along as best I could and keep my various stories and interruptions to a minimum. You know how hard that is for me. So good night and thanks. You guys, I love you guys. I love your commitment and your interest and the fact that you're paying attention and you're reading the materials. I couldn't ask for a better commission. So thanks again for all of that. And I bid you good night.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Night,
Thank
folks.
you, Chair.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, and great job on the talk show thing.
A great job on the what thing?
On the Good Morning Show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Caitlin, I have to tell you about that. We'll have to see if you want to put a link to that or not. I was interviewed on the morning show. Thank you for that, Biff. Yeah, well, it was all preparation. You know, I had my notes and I pretty much thought through the key things. I hope I didn't screw up on some of the details of the way the ordinances work. I tried to stay away from too much detail on that for all the obvious reasons. But yeah, I think you got the main point across as to why we're here.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.